All right, so we will get going now, Jan. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, fellow South Africans, and welcome to Moving Freight from Road to Rail on the Transport Forum's platform. Please pretend that I'm Harry van Heestian today. He is unfortunately ill and cannot be with us, so we wish him a speedy recovery, and please keep him in your prayers so that he is with us in the next session. Mr. Bernard Arvita from the World Bank has also had an incident in his family and will not be with us today. So what we are going to be doing is we are going to be extending all the talk by 5 minutes, and especially the MIT talk. We see they've got lots of slides, so they can have an extra 5 minutes. And I am going to firstly hand over to Bertie Phillips, the Chief Executive Officer of the Multimodal Inland Port Association, and he's going to take us, he's going to introduce the MIPA overview. Then we will change to Mr. Ian Bird on his Road to Rail presentation, and then Mhlali Gladla on the DOT strategy for moving freight from road to rail, and we'll then go into a comfort break. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Bertie, over to you.
Bertie, you're on mute.
Gentlemen, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, just give me 1 sec. I'm just trying to deal with my own technological challenges, also over 60. Here we go. I'm here today to provide an overview of MIPA, and welcome to our keynote speakers, the Transport Forum delegates and members of MIPA. I'm presenting to you in my capacity as the CEO of MIPA and consultant in the engineering and built environment profession. Have an academic.
Can you switch your video on or share your screen?
I'm trying to get to that. Give me 1 second. I see, here we go. Start my video. Am I visible on the screen at this point?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, so this session comes exactly a year since I launched on the Transport Forum that was held on the 23rd of May, 2024. And since then, we've experienced some degree of success, considerable success in strengthening the association by reaching out and engaging with government and its counterparts, as well as a multitude of logistic businesses and transport organizations. Today's summit marks the cementing of our launch, where we bring you a lineup of keynote speakers from DOT and industry. This will be followed by a showcase of the MIPA members' sites in Southern Africa. Harry, not with us now, has prepared a terrific program with interesting speakers. We have 9 speakers lined up, and we are grateful for the support of the Transport Forum and the generous sponsors, most of whom are directly aligned with our very own aims and objectives and play a vital role in moving South Africa. Today we have 6 MIPA members representing 6 inland ports and 1 of our members representing Rail Runner South Africa. As we grow, our aim is to extend our reach from sub-Saharan Africa to the continent of Africa as a whole, and to become the MIPA of Africa by 2030. So for those of you who are wondering what MIPA is and what our purpose is and are new to this forum, MIPA is a network organization registered as a not-for-profit association of members who represent inland port interests of various stages and sizes of development. During the proceedings, each member will have the opportunity of presenting their own inland port, and this will give delegates a better understanding of inland ports and the role of MIPA in the network organization. So the purpose of MIPA is to promote, support, and advocate for the movement of cargo from road to rail via inland ports, and multimodalism occurs more easily with inland ports playing a vital role in reducing congestion at Transnet Port Authority seaports. Both modes of road and rail link into the major ports, and the inland port is an adjunct to the seaport in most instances. The inland port can provide the services of customs, storage, refrigeration, stuffing, destuffing, and optimizing road-to-rail transfer for imports and exports, or IMEX. The association was formulated when like-minded inland port operators realized the common goals of their entities, and the members began to cooperate in their engagement with our government counterparts. The main role players are the Department of Transport, Transnet Freight Rail, Transnet National Ports Authority, as well as SARS and several civil society organizations, such as the Road Freight Association, the South African Association of Freight Forwarders, or SAF, and then the Road Federation, SAF, as well. So just to contextualize it in terms of the events leading up to this session, we've been extremely fortunate that in the background to all our efforts, there have been parallel processes, which include the introduction of the Transnet Rail Infrastructure Manager, or TRIM. This was a major step forward, and to date, TRIM has received 98 applications for slots being made available across the rail network from private operating companies. And number two, a network statement from TRIM states a more efficient, reliable, and sustainable rail system that can drive economic growth, job creation, and social development. This reinforces MIPA's aims and objectives and paves the way for moving freight from road to rail. It would appear that MIPA was created in the right place at the right time. The private sector participation announcement of the Department of Transport, or PSP as it's known, was circulated with a request for information to interested and affected parties in potential private sector participation in the rail and port freight logistics projects, close quote. This process concludes on the 31st of May at the end of this month, and we anticipate major announcements thereafter. So that's a very interesting space for MIPA. This is a monumental step forward by Transnet and makes way for revitalization of the rail services, or freight rail services. Fourth point, MIPA is developing an interchange agreement for its members with assistance from ENS Africa law firm, and this will help bring the individual members into formal agreement on code of conduct, operations, etc. And to date, MIPA has issued more than 30 press releases with assistance from CVLC Communication. Our chairman and spokesperson, Mr. Warwick Lord, has met with umpteen print media, radio, television journalists in and amongst his busy schedule. The National Logistics Crisis Committee is a major initiative that aims to unlock the potential of rail infrastructure. And then finally, our second AGM took place in Midrand on the 31st of January this year and was well attended. So, the members of MIPA agree to collaborate on best practices for public-private partnerships for trade facilitation solutions. And this is made possible by location of inland terminals alongside Transnet freight rail infrastructure. In the future, the inland terminals might very well perform customs duties and allow for improved freight management for import and export. Working towards creating an environment where businesses can thrive by minimizing barriers to growth. As an association, we are able to listen to our members' interests and provide support in many ways. We foster trade activities that meet social objectives and are expanding the network to include more government, civil society, private sector operators, and academia. We develop innovative solutions that use technology and data to secure supply chains. To this end, our Rail Runner member, Mr. Mike Daniel, is working tirelessly on his innovative solution to multimodalism that will be presented in the program later today. Finally, the aims and objectives of MIPA are to drive workable multimodal solutions between rail, road, ports, and air cargo requirements of industry, reform the rail industry through private investment, And this is considerable. In the context of inland ports, investment starting at roughly 200 million, growing considerably in accordance with the needs and demands of industry, and in terms of size and scale. This contributes significantly to the economy and the GDP of South Africa. To convert rail-friendly volumes from road to rail, this fundamental objective being to move freight more efficiently as displayed by the MIPA members' presentations. To optimize industrial and logistical activities around South Africa through efficient multimodalism, and to expand collaboration with other freight hubs and stakeholders that could help deliver the objectives of MIPA. Without going further into the intricacies of MIPA, and in the interest of time, I'll hand over to our three keynote speakers who will provide interesting presentations on the background in which we operate today. Thank you.
Thank you, Bertie. That is, oops, can everybody see that? Yes.
Yes.
I have erred in not doing the sponsors recognition right at the beginning of the program, Jan.
Yeah,
But we've had the MIPA overview, and I'm going to propose that we do the road to rail from Mr. Ian Bird, and then we do the sponsors recognition. Is that okay, Jan?
okay, yes. I was just going to comment on that, but it's correct. Just give over to me, and then we'll do the sponsors overview from my side. It's also good as there have come into the meeting a lot of more people. So right in the beginning, we were not full house. So in the meantime, it is like that. So yeah, I apologize again for the problems with the sounds in the beginning. It is now sorted, and we're thankful for that. Carry on, Mike. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan. So I will stop sharing and introduce, well, he needs no introduction. He's very well known in the integrated supply chain space and the rail space. Mr. Ian Bird, will you please give us your presentation? And we are all looking forward to what you have to say. Thank you very much. Well, Jan, may I suggest then, if Ian is not available at this point in time, I will call him on the landline. Why don't we then do the sponsors recognition now?
Okay, let's do that then.
Thank you.
So the program is, so Mike and Bertie will be the guides through the session in the absence of Harry. So then we acknowledge all the associates, and of course right in the beginning we should mention that CTRAC is the platinum sponsor. There are the associates. We will go through them one by one, and there is gold sponsors. Well, at the top is the associates, then it's also the media, and then the gold sponsors. And the gold sponsors, and let's start with this area, Rethinking Rail and Connecting Africa. Thank you for all the sponsors. The South African Association of Freight Forwarders is AFF. Then let's look at the video.
What does it take to compete on the world stage? To go.
Is the sound coming through?
Yes.
Of the video?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Head to head with the best of the best. Excellence, agility, resilience, a willingness to keep on evolving. It takes courageous leadership to be bold and chart the course, to connect the dots, bringing stakeholders together to overcome the hurdles we all face and to deliver best practice. It's about business at the click of a button, delivering at the speed of the internet, connecting people, products, and places, strengthening our supply chains, faster and more cost-effective than ever. Since 1921, we've given voice and vision to the freight forwarding industry, navigating the tides of international trade, evolving ever more sophisticated supply chains, bridging local and global markets to move our economy forward. Welcome to our world. The South African Association of Freight Forwarders, architects of transport for over a century.
Thank you, SAFF. Now also the South African Express Parcel Associations, SIPA, SABUA, the South African Bus Operators Association. Thank you very much for your sponsorship. Safer Stops, Uniting Mind, Sharing Vision and Resources. Thank you also International Women in Transport. The South African Freight News, Railways Africa, Creamer Media's Engineering News, focus on transport and logistics. Views and features for import-export decision makers, South Africa's Freight News. The Railways Africa is the African Continent Special Trade, technical business-to-business online publication covering all aspects of the rail sector. Sometimes this mouse of me double clicks, so let me just, where am I now? Focus. Okay, let me do, it takes two at a time. Focus on transport and logistics. Thank you. Creamer Media News, Engineering News. Creamer Media. Here's the video.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Engineering News and Mining Weekly magazine, published on Friday, 11 April 2025. In this week's cover article, Engineering News and Mining Weekly Senior Deputy Editor Online Tasneem Bulbulia writes that related moves are underway to halt the slide in water infrastructure. South Africa's water and sanitation infrastructure is in a poor state, and stakeholders recognize the urgent need to address this to prevent a supply crisis, with various partnership and regulatory initiatives being pursued to mitigate the situation. The Engineering News features focus on manufacturing, where an organization outlines the potential of essential and vegetable oils, and generators and standby power, where an engine dealer expands its generator range. The Mining Weekly features focus on mining in Tanzania, where a gold major eyes further in-country growth. This week's business leader is Telly Chauke, the CEO of Petco. And as this week's cartoon shows, in Donald Trump's second presidential term, the US president is building tariff walls and insisting that the cost will be borne by exporting countries. But economic history and theory show that US businesses and consumers will be the ones paying the initial costs. We hope you enjoy this week's edition of Creamer Media's Engineering News and Mining Weekly. Be sure to subscribe to the magazine that offers you in-depth news about developments in the real economy by emailing subscriptions at engineeringnews.co.za. Happy reading and see you next time.
Those were our media alliances. Of course, now our platinum sponsor is Ctrack. Ctrack is a leading provider of innovative telematics solutions. They've got the Crystal software platform, that offer scalable modules empowering businesses to expand and succeed. Thank you, C-Track. There's a video for them.
A lot has changed in the 4 decades that we've been keeping vehicles and business equipment safe and always visible. And we've learned a thing or two along the way. That's why our focus is firmly on the future. A future that goes beyond just tracking and reporting, challenging the status quo, and exploring what the power of technology, combined with AI, can unlock for your business. Because talking did not earn us the reputation of being the leader in fleet telematics solutions. Pushing boundaries with constant innovation did, and putting our customers first by asking, what if, what's next, and what's possible? For the power of foresight over hindsight to plan ahead and make smarter decisions. What if you could predict the optimal route to increase on-time deliveries and significantly reduce long-term maintenance? What if you could predict the best tractor speed on the day to reduce wasted spray and cover more ground with precision? Or if something as trivial as a few centimeters could predict the difference between maximum efficiency or maximum risk? Because in our world, and likely in yours too, having insights that can be used as foresight with a crystal clear view of the future is the only thing that matters to remain ahead for better control, better efficiencies, and better overall performance. It's the telematics and AI solution that goes beyond tracking and reporting. Step into the future with Crystal by C-Track and experience the power to predict.
Thank you, C-Track. Gold sponsors, Freeway, Fleet Maintenance Software, then Bid Air Cargo. Let me just admit some people here. Thank you, Bid Air Cargo. Fulfills the needs of express cargo industry for daytime and overnight cargo capacity across a comprehensive southern and East Africa footprint. Let's watch the video.
In the world of express freight, there's one name that stands above the rest: Bid Air Cargo. Our airport-to-airport line haul service is the backbone of South Africa's express freight industry. At Bid Air Cargo, we don't just deliver cargo. We go the extra mile to ensure a seamless and efficient experience in South Africa. With our unwavering commitment to excellence and improved technology, we handle your cargo with utmost care and deliver it on time, every time. Our dedication to service excellence is what sets us apart. We live by our core values of service excellence, mutual respect, integrity, and accountability. When you choose Bid Air Cargo, you're choosing a partner that takes pride in going above and beyond for your freight needs. From pharmaceuticals to perishable goods, automotive parts to live animal transportation, we handle a diverse range of commodities. Our attention to detail and precision ensure that your cargo arrives in perfect condition, no matter what it is. Our dedicated teams work tirelessly to guarantee the safety and efficient transport of your cargo. We leave no stone unturned to ensure your freight arrives at its destination intact and on time. With our advanced track and trace system, you can monitor your shipments in real time. Stay informed about the whereabouts of your cargo with just a few clicks. Our goal is to provide you with peace of mind and complete transparency throughout the entire journey. We understand that time is of the essence for our valued customers. That's why we offer a user-friendly online portal that simplifies the documentation process. Obtain quotations and create e-waivers with ease, saving you valuable time and effort. Whether you have a small package or a large shipment, Bid Air Cargo handles it all with equal care and precision. Our ISO certification is a testament to our commitment to quality and professionalism. We don't just excel in domestic express freight, we also cater to your international cargo needs. No matter the size of your business, whether you're a small enterprise or a multinational corporation, you can trust us to handle your cargo with the same level of dedication and attention to detail. Connect with us today and discover the difference our innovative technology, seamless tracking, and customer-oriented approach will make to your operation. Bid Air Cargo. Same-day express every day, overnight express every night.
Thank you, Bid Air Cargo.
In the world of express,
Sorry, now control fleet, execute like never before. Here's their video.
At Control Fleet, innovation is at the heart of every decision we make. We execute like never before. Our features include planning, scheduling, driver application, and our value proposition is continuous value and execution for you. We love logistics and transport operations, our clients, and our aim is to provide them with new age technology, innovate their business, and take them to the future.
Thank you, Control Fleet. Unitrans, a leading provider of integrated end-to-end supply chain and logistics services that make it happen for their customers by streamlining operations, reducing complexities throughout the entire supply chain.
Our continent continues to grow, and our industrial division is focused on connecting Africa to global markets. As our region evolves, so does our footprint across key trade passages and corridors, enabling new opportunities and growth. Unitrans is committed to fueling this growth by providing integrated warehousing and freight transport solutions. This capability has evolved across a number of customers, sectors, and countries, and continues to expand, seamlessly linking road freight, multimodal solutions, warehousing, secondary logistics, as well as freight forwarding and clearing activities. We are able to offer customers a full end-to-end solution that manages logistics needs in an efficient and cost-effective manner. With a strong focus on technology and partnerships, we continue to strengthen our approach as a managed logistics service that gets the job done.
Thank
Our
you.
continent can...
Thank you, Unitrans. Now, University of Johannesburg, their Department of Transport and Supply Chain Management is housed at the School of Management within the College of Business and Economics at University of Johannesburg. Thank you, UJ. Data Noble, well-established research organization specializing in both quantitative and qualitative analysis. We've got a variety of cutting-edge tools to deliver customer experience and other sentiment-based research programs. Thank you, Data Noble. Cuba, transforming ticketing, part of the ICM Mobility Group. They know mobility. Thank you, Cuba. Standard Bank, they have 160 years of experience, and they believe that dreams matter and that together we make those dreams a reality. Thank you, Standard Bank. Let me go back one. Global Trade Solution. They offer innovative solutions, transforming global supply chain, consulting and strategy, software, and specialized services. Eish, this thing that double-click me all the time. Zutari, Impact Engineered. Thank you, Zutari, for their sponsorship. Let me just go one back. Zutari, and then JC Auditors. They are a SANAS accredited certification body providing international recognized certifications. Thank you for what they are doing. Thank you for their sponsorship, JC Auditors.
Welcome to JC Auditors, your trusted partner in road freight certification solutions. At JCA, we offer a single integrated solution for road freight companies, enabling you to achieve all your compliance and certification requirements. Our focus on the South African National Standard, RTMS, ensures your fleet meets the high standards in safety, efficiency, and sustainability.
Promoting vehicle safety and fostering safe driving behavior are keys to RTMS success. With a national presence of a growing footprint in the SADC regions, JCA is your local and regional expert in road transport compliance. Our certificates are SANAS accredited and IAF aligned, so rest assured that JC Auditors certifications are recognized globally. Our team of professional road transport experts brings unparalleled experience and dedication to every client, ensuring your company is always compliant. Having conducted over 10,000 audits in the last 15 years, JCA's expertise is proven, tried, and trusted across the industry. We proudly serve South Africa's leading road freight companies, along with a host of other forward-thinking and ambitious transporters, driving road transport excellence. Join the many satisfied clients who trust JC Auditors for their road freight certification needs, including RTMS, ISO 9001, and more. Visit us at www.jcauditors.com and drive your business forward with confidence.
Thank you, JC Auditors. Easy Clear, the leading software provider, software solutions. Thank you, Easy Clear. IFC Solutions, a product of Ticket Pros, who is owned by the JSE listed company Blue Label Telecoms. Thank you, IFC Solutions. Let's look. That was IoT, thank you. In Control.
Our shipment process allows you to automate tasks that once required manual paperwork, WhatsApp messages, and phone calls. With streamlined electronic workflows and detailed reports, you can reduce administrative time by up to 50%, speed up invoice turnaround by 75%, and boost customer satisfaction with real-time updates. Shipment process types includes contract shipments, ad hoc truck hire, cross-border shipments, and rigging shipments. Our RTMS software allows you to automate data collection effortlessly, guarantee accurate calculations, and instantly generate reports on RTMS compliance. Measure and manage your fleet the in-control way.
Thank you, In Control. There's our business directory. You may contact Olga Mashilo at that number, and for that nominal fee you may enroll for lots of advantages and list your business on the business directory. There are more than 7,000 unique visitors. You get exposed to them on this business directory, the Transport Forum. And if you then on the Transport Forum, you may log in, register, log in. There's the procedure. Create yourself a username, password. You got access to the Plant Transport Forum's website with all the videos, all the valuable information regarding all the participants and the sponsors on the Transport Forum. There are then, let me just go that one back. We have then the platinum sponsor, the associates, the media alliances, and the gold sponsors. And you may download all the videos, and it's all then for free to register on the website of the Transport Forum. Okay, we're back to our program. Mike, are you going to take it further for now?
Thanks, Jan. I will take it further. And ladies and gentlemen, I have got very good news. We're on time. It's 9:48 now, and according to our program, the MIPA overview should have ended at 09:50. So we have, so I've got 2 minutes of waffle. And I want to just propose that, everybody engages with Transport Forum. It is a fantastic tool to use to grow your business and to communicate with like-minded logistics people. And now, without any further ado, I'm going to introduce Ian, the Executive Consultant, Integrated Supply Chains, and he's going to be talking to us about, believe it or not, road to rail. Ian, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. It's 9:50 on schedule, and just as a good scheduled railway should operate, we are on time, so that's really good news. Who would be driving the slides?
Would you like me to do it, or would you do
Please.
it from your side?
No, if you could, thank you.
Okay, just one moment then again. Let me
Thank you
just
very much.
slide. Just give me a chance quickly.
Thank you. Just while you're busy, the talk today will deal with an overview of the work being done across various platforms to basically deal with the rail challenges, restore rails, the trust in rail through these efforts, and particularly focusing on the integrated nature of the future of transport in the country, and how we can achieve the significant volumes that the Minister of Transport is targeting on rail by 2030. I'm sure most of you are aware the Minister, Barbara Creecy, has been very vocal in recent times in the media regarding her targets for her department, and particularly for rail. And she is seeking a target of 250 million tonnes on rail by 2030. And I will go through today the efforts across a range of entities, organizations, and government structures that are working tirelessly to achieve that ramp up and profile up to the 250 million tonnes. So if we can just start with the first slide.
Is this the right slide?
Yes,
Okay.
this is the right one. Yeah,
okay. So it's
All
only
right.
a PDF. You have not sent a PowerPoint. It's this PDF. Hey?
Okay. If you could just expand it, that would be helpful if
Yeah,
that's possible.
let me
Thank
do
you.
full screen.
All right. Well, look, I think just go to the next slide. It's fine. We can work through that. I think it should be big enough. Yeah. What I'm going to touch on in the next 15 minutes or so is dealing with the National Logistics Crisis Committee, the work that they're doing, the work that's being done by Transnet, Department of Transport, and then a proposed entity that's still to come into being called the Council for Transportation and Logistics. So those will be the topics that I'll cover, and just touch on the landscape that these entities are working within to restore businesses' faith in the rail system, and hopefully then migrate volumes from road to rail. Those volumes that should logically be migrated from road to rail, and that rail finds its rightful place in the value chain. If we can just go to the next slide. I see it is cutting it off somewhat. Jan, maybe we could
Uh,
look.
must I go out of the full?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All right, let me just
Thank you.
go escape. Is it better now?
Yeah, let's just put the slide that I'm talking to in the middle of the page. That'll be fine.
Okay.
Just to orientate everybody around the National Logistics Crisis Committee, we came into being in May of 23. It's being run out of the Business for South Africa platform. That's a platform that includes all organized business structures, Business Unity South Africa, Business Leadership South Africa, as well as any other interested party that wishes to participate in businesses' engagements in the partnership with government through the National Logistics Crisis Committee. And just to confirm, business is not the National Logistics Crisis Committee. It has an engagement structure with the National Logistics Crisis Committee, which I'll touch on in a minute. But the primary focus was to stabilize and improve the key logistics corridors that service our export markets. That's the rail and port, and then also to look at structural reform in the logistics industry, dealing with open access and private sector participation in the logistics space, and opening up the logistics space for competition from the private sector with the established operators such as Transnet. And the NLCC has now been going for the better part of 2 years, as you can see. We envisage a further period to perhaps March of 26. And we're dealing extensively, as you would have seen, with hopefully improving Transnet services, while we concurrently bring in private sector, whether it's through open access, private operators on the network through open access, or alternatively private sector participation, which could include concessions of certain operations, rail and ports. So that's the one platform that is extensively involved in ensuring that rail takes its rightful place in the value chain, and we can then hopefully achieve a road to rail migration. If we go to the next slide. We engage then with the government structures, Transnet and all the various government departments as business through 8 work streams, which are shown up on the slides here. The primary ones are work stream 1, which deals with the operational performance of the rail and ports. And then work stream 2 is a road transport work stream, where clearly we've had to recognize that while Transnet and the rail service is improving or stabilizing and improving, we have to deal with the fact that business has got to continue, exports have got to continue, and road took over a number of those routes and corridors, and has replaced rail where it's been necessary, given the rail performance, to keep the economy going. Business and the government and the NLCC have therefore been engaging on making sure that the road transport is effectively managed and operated on the routes, particularly the N2, N3, N4, and the routes to Gqeberha, where primary focus for the while has been on the N4, and trying to ensure that we have a safe flow and an efficient flow of road transport to the ports and the terminals where required. Clearly, in time to come, one wants to move and migrate those vehicles and the cargo there onto a rail solution, and particularly on the N4, for example, where we've spent extensive time, it's become quite clear that the cargo on that route is untenable just going on road. We have to ensure that we migrate across to rail, and that hence the focus on making sure that we improve the rail systems in the country on those platforms that I was mentioning earlier. If we go to the next slide, the focus of the NLCC, as I've mentioned, is driven by the Freight Logistics Roadmap, which was adopted by Cabinet back in December of 23, with the focus, as you can see, moving from addressing the immediate challenges in the freight logistics system all the way through to developing an appropriate and sustainable subsidy framework, fully implement the economic regulation of transport bill, etc. But point 1 and 4 are the focus areas of the conversation today, where we're sitting with the issues of keeping Transnet going and making sure that the rail system is capable of dealing with the future demands of it, both with Transnet operating as well as in private sector coming in over time through the structural form areas. So we've been arresting the decline in the performance, stabilizing the system, and making sure that the network is ready for private sector participation and for Transnet to operate concurrently, and hopefully create the platform that cargo owners are willing to take the opportunities of using rail going forward and migrate their cargo from road to road. Go to the next slide, John. Thanks. Just to touch on, and I'll leave it in the deck, the work we have been doing on the road transport. We've been focused on the safety, reducing the cost of doing business, the freedom of movement, and the freedom of choice. So those have been the 4 key elements of the work we've been doing in Workstream 2 with the government, with SANRAL, BMA, SARS, etc., to make sure that while road transport is in big demand, given the Transnet performance, that road transport is able to perform following these key criteria, and seeking then opportunities to migrate from road to rail as we move along and rail's performance improves. We go to the next slide. Just touching on the rail situation, and that's the top box. Transnet back in the day did 226 million tons on rail. It declined over a number of years to eventually in 23-24 152 million tons. 24-25 we did improve. We stabilized and improved over that period, particularly with efforts from Transnet and its executive management, and new executive management that came on board, but working very closely with business. And 24-25 was 161 million tons. The target for this year is 180 million tons, you can see in 25-26. And as I mentioned earlier in the preamble, the real focus is the pathway to 250 million tons on rail. Now, that's not going to come purely from economic growth. We do have to consider that in the 250 million tons will be volumes that are migrated from road to rail. So it's both a combination of those factors, and the growth from the, let's call it the 160 that Transnet did last year on rail to 250 million tons lies in a combination of the export volumes on pit to port, but primarily the biggest growth component of the 90 million tons, if you're looking at the 160 to the 250, the biggest component of growth we anticipate is in the so-called general freight space, which is a combination of sort of mining commodities, intermodal business, containers, etc., industrial commodities, industrial products. But we do recognize that there is a growth in the pit to port, which largely is already on rail in the main on the main corridors. But ultimately, one is now suggesting and planning for the significant growth. And by the way, the 250 million tons is not only Transnet. That would be a combination of private sector operators, concessioned operations, as well as Transnet Freight Rail still continuing to operate in the space. So the key message from this graph is to show that the minister has set the targets. It's a significant volume uplift from the 160, and it is going to take work by both the train operating companies, Transnet, the rail infrastructure manager, as well as the private sector to get to those volumes. And the cargo owners are going to continue to play a significant role in determining the modal shift from road to rail and when that should happen. So if we can go to the next slide. No, sorry, I think you just go back. Sorry, go on one. Sorry, just go on one and we'll go back. And then lastly, the work that the NLCC is doing with business and Transnet, we're focusing on a number of initiatives to deal with the challenges on rail. It's really the collaboration and the partnership between the government structures, Transnet and business, where we can make sure that rail returns its operational performance, and it is available then to get itself on that pathway to the 250 million tons, and ensuring, of course, that cargo owners feel comfortable and confident, and that it's economically viable for them to migrate their cargo from road to rail. So at this slide, that will sort of close out the work that the NLCC and the partnership between government and business is dealing with. And if we can just go back to the previous slide, and then just to tie in, this is busy and I won't spend any time on it, but this is now the key deliverables of significant work that is being done by the Department of Transport in dealing with the future of rail in the country. The NRMP up there stands for the National Rail Master Plan. The department has really been progressive in the way that it's looking at the future of rail in the country. There's been the appointment of world-class and best-of-breed consultants by the department to drive a significant planning and research work that will culminate in a report, a draft report, hopefully in the next couple of months, that will set out the way forward for rail in the country, including, of course, the migration of cargo from road to rail and the intermodal aspects of transportation of goods in the country. This work is really it's significant work for the country. It will be aligned with the work that's being done by Transnet itself, by the NLCC, and other entities. But from a business perspective and dealing closely on a regular basis with DOT, this is really significant work, and I think it is really going to set the scene for cargo owners for the future, and giving them comfort that at the government and the policy level, significant work is being done and will be approved, will be adopted, dealing with the future of rail in the country. And it's, again, to emphasize, it's not only Transnet, it's rail in the broader sense, including third-party operators and any concessioned operations which will come about through structural reform. And if we just go on a couple of slides, Jan. The structural reform, if I could just touch on that for a moment, which is being dealt with largely by the Department of Transport at the moment, and obviously Transnet and the future of Transnet lies in the reform work that's being done. There are two pieces of work: the third-party rail access, which is to open up the rail network, and it's already in play, to third-party or private operators who are able to pass all the various governance and technical qualifications to get onto and be able to operate on what is currently Transnet's network. And that in itself is going to open up a private sector investment in locomotives and wagons, and additionally, therefore, create capacity to get us up to the 250 million tons that I mentioned earlier. So it creates the space for the road to rail migration to take place, and significant work has already been done over many years in the space of the network statement, which is the mechanism which allows for and governs third-party rail access. Most of you would be aware there's already been slots applied for by a number of third-party operators, and the Transnet Rail Infrastructure Manager is currently assessing those applications for approval, which will then allow these train operating companies, including Transnet, then to be able, TFR, to be able to operate on the network. The good news here is, we view this as already the start of a road to rail migration, where the volumes that are being indicated by these applicants for third-party access are, in the main or cargoes that are currently running on or being transported on road, and will then hopefully be transported on rail under a third party or private sector operator. Alongside that sits the private sector participation. That's what the PSP stands for. And that is currently being run as a process by the Department of Transport with a request for information that's closing on the 31st of May. And this is then dealing with private sector proposals for investment in rail and port assets. And already the RFI process, which has been going for a month or so, or 6 weeks, has been very positively welcomed by the market. And this again will create private sector investment and will create capacity in the rail and port network to facilitate the road to rail migration that we're seeking to get up to those volumes that we believe are vital for the future of the economy as the economy grows in the next 5 or so years. So very good news on the rail reform and creating the space for private sector and cargo owners to consider rail as an alternative to road. We go on to the next slide, Jan. When this is all said and done, the National Logistics Crisis Committee, the NLCC, has been going for 2 years, as you've seen, will probably be carrying on until March of next year. We need to understand what happens after the NLCC and this focus on logistics and the future of logistics in the country. There currently isn't an organized body sitting at the apex of transportation and logistics, though clearly players in the market are well served by various industry bodies that are focused on perhaps more the modal aspects, such as the African Rail Industry Association, RFA, etc., SAF, and others. And we believe and are proposing that there be consideration given for a council for transportation and logistics, which will deal with all aspects of logistics going forward. And this could be the logical successor then to the current engagements that business has, or the partnership that business has with government. It needs to be continued. It can't come to an end. It has been successful up until now. And we need to ensure that there is a continuation beyond the closeout, if you will, of the NLCC. So this is a proposal on a council that possibly could take the future of logistics forward. And part of it, if we just go to the next slide, is one of the thinking at the moment, which is picking up from all the work being done by the various entities, is to look at an intermodal logistics master plan, which will be informed by all the work that's being done under the National Rail Master Plan, the work that's being done in the private sector, the work that Transnet is doing, and the work that the NLCC has done to date. And try and establish then an opportunity for a space where one can really drive an intermodal strategy for the country, and be able then to integrate road and rail in economically viable solutions and drive economically competitive exports and local movement of cargo, which will then drive the economy. So we are proposing and doing some work at the moment under the Business for South Africa banner to perhaps envisage what an intermodal future for the country could look like, and that will clearly then drive a road to rail migration. Jan, I think that's the end of my presentation, and thank you very much. Mike, I'm not sure how my timing has gone, but hopefully there's time for a few questions. Thank you.
Your timing is spot on, Ian. You went
Thank you.
3 minutes short of the time allocated. So I think I know that you won't be available for questions and answers later on. So, ladies and gentlemen, would you have any questions for Ian that you'd like to pose to him now? And Ian, I'd just like to say thanks for sharing all this work that has been done and assisting in bringing the road to rail dream to fruition. And on behalf of the Chairman and CEO of MIPA, please push on our button if you need anything, if you need input into your CTL or anything else. The MIPA members would be more than happy to participate. Are there any questions, Jan?
Mark, I've got a question.
Please go.
Ian, quick question for you, and congratulations with the work being done, and thank you so much for the insightful presentation. There's obviously a lot of moving parts and a lot of complexity that needs to work through in order to get the coordinated supply chain you discussed. Can I maybe ask you for what is the single biggest risk that keeps you up at night in this process, in order just to maybe articulate that to us, and what's going well so far? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, the worry we've got is the operational performance and the speed in which, well, both the operational performance of the current rail service provider, as well as then the speed in which we could introduce the private sector operators. Both of those are challenged at the moment by the condition of the network. And I don't think it's a big secret that the network has not been properly maintained, and significant work is going to be required over the next 4 to 5 years, which has been independently assessed on the two main corridors, the two export corridors, the coal and the iron ore. But particularly, we are also then, there's going to be an independent assessment done of the container corridor, which would then allow for more sleepless nights, if you will, because these corridors need, the basic infrastructure does need to be rehabilitated. And, if you're a private operator bringing your rolling stock, and some of it may well be new rolling stock, onto track that's not in the right condition, is a challenge. And Transnet itself, or TFR itself, is currently being challenged by the condition of the network, the signaling system, the electricity, the electrical supply to the network, etc. So those are the infrastructure challenges are significant, and there's a lot of hard work being done at the moment that currently is under the auspices of the Transnet Rail Infrastructure Manager, TRIM, and they've got their shoulder to the wheel, but there are significant challenges, and the private sector is going to need to jump in to assist where they can, and those structures are being put into place. You need safe, secure, and stable infrastructure to be able to put, to be able to deliver on the commitments that TFR and train operating companies are going to be making. So thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ian. We have a question online from Sandra. She wants to know who is leading the development of the ILMP.
Sandra, thanks very much for the question. At the moment, it's simply being put out in concept by the business team that's working in the partnership with government. We've been pulling from various research documents, work being done currently, the National Rail Master Plan, etc., as I said. And I'm happy to take a conversation with you offline, because I think your input and your thoughts could also be valuable as we consider developing that. So thank you very much.
Agreed. Benji, I see your hand. Please continue. Please
Thank you,
unmute yourself.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Ian for the comprehensive presentation. Ian, can I kindly introduce myself? My name is Benji Sikamo from the Department of Economic Development in the City of Johannesburg. I would like to hear if you do have the information of any plans in terms of the railroad in Johannesburg, especially the park station and so forth. But also, we are currently in the process of finalizing our local economic strategy. And I think we would like to interview you. I would want to interview you to request you to be part of the stakeholder engagements that we are currently having, so that we can then have your input into the strategy that we are busy finalizing. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just in terms of your first question, we've only focused on freight, though the NLCC does deal with passenger transport. as well as how the various rail networks integrate with freight, where you've got passengers and rail and passengers and freight, and particularly in the Gauteng complex. But the focus of all the efforts has been primarily on freight. But I'm happy to have more detailed conversation with you, and more than welcome to participate in the economic modeling or development as you guys go forward with your planning. And Mike, I'm not sure how we can pass my details across, but very happy to be part of the panel. Thanks, Benji.
Yeah, we will. Thanks, Ian.
Okay.
We will. I will reach out to Benji and make sure that I get your details to him, as well as some of the other MIPA members, Benji, because they are all. A lot of them are focused on the Johannesburg area and increasing capacity in the Johannesburg area for freight. Are there any more questions for Ian?
Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you, and I'm pleased to be
Thanks, Ian.
stayed on time.
Thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Take care now.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next person is a freight logistics specialist from the Department of Transport, and she will be talking to us about the DOT strategy for moving freight from road to rail. Ms. Lali, please take it away. You need no introduction.
Ever so kind. Ever so kind, Mike. Good morning. Good morning to the fellow panelists, as well as everyone who's on the platform. I would just like to start by saying that we as a department acknowledge and appreciate the work that's been done by the Multimodal Inland Port Association, and we would like to further collaborate with them, because anything that seeks to ensure effective public partnership is what we do. Just to also heighten the question that was asked by Benji, that the Johannesburg municipality has got a responsibility to develop an ITP. That ITP becomes part of the IDP, which is then channeled through the province. And I know that with the MEC Diboni Diali Tabela, she does have a freight logistics specific intention, as the department is currently called Transport and Logistics. So those processes go through that, and there is a developmental infrastructure framework that's currently being developed by the province. So it would be good for you to just communicate with them, but also the city in particular within the ITP. Now, to the job that I've been asked to do today, to give a presentation on freight road to rail, the disadvantage with presenting after Ian is that the Department of Transport does report to the NLCC, which Ian sits in. So a lot of the things that he's spoken to are things that we are doing as a department, but I will heighten them and perhaps give a bigger context as to what they are. I'm hoping that the presentation has been flighted, Mike, because I only see myself on the screen.
You want us to share your presentation?
Please, please.
Okay,
please,
just give me a
thank you.
moment.
So while Mike is doing that, the contents of the presentation will be the background, the introduction. We'll do the logistics and economic cost of production, South African logistics system performance, the state of logistics in South Africa, investments in infrastructure, our targeted commodities for road to rail movement, or the equitable share between the two land surface transport modes, our strategic division. So what we had said we wanted to do when this freight road rail migration plan was adopted by the department and as well as Parliament. We'll slightly look at the regional and intercontinental relations, because it's important for us to denote what those are and where we need to move. A roadmap for freight logistics in South Africa, which has been promulgated by Cabinet in 2024. We'll have a look at cross-border and regional continental freight logistics movement, and then what progress we've done to date. The progress will heighten some of the issues which Ian has dealt with. Are we winning, Mike?
Are you ready, Jan?
Just one moment. Let me just get the right one.
There we go. And Ms. Lali, just so that you know,
There we go.
You've got 30 minutes, so please enjoy yourself.
Let me try. Can we get through the background? So we've passed the contents, the background slide, which is slide number 3.
You want slide number 3?
Yes, there we go. So the background of the South African freight logistics, I think we all know this. So I'm going to go through this quite speedily. That South Africa has got a very strategic logistics infrastructure, which cuts across the different modes of transport that we have. That's road, rail, fuel pipelines, airports, and port networks. What you see on the right hand of this slide is the denotion of where and what lies. So we've put there our border posts in South Africa and who we border in terms of the countries that are around South Africa. We put the port infrastructure. What we don't have there is Port Noloth, which is currently in the Northern Cape, but the 8 commercial ports are there. We put our airports, and in terms of roads, we put the national roads, which is about 24,000 kilometers that is run by SANRAL, and as well as the Transnet Freight Rail Network. Now, you know that the rail net, this is fine. Well, the presentation will come as we go. Let me just continue, but hoping that we'll win with the presentation. The road network is about 750,000 kilometers, and of that, only 24,000 is run by SANRAL, which is the national route. The rail network is about 30,000 kilometers, which is currently being run by Transnet. Now, the inequitable road-rail split stands at 88% on rail versus 12% on road. And this is unsustainable for the South African economy or the infrastructure development and or the investments. Next slide. South Africa holds an immense potential to become a gateway for Africa's network, but we are plunged by problems and challenges which have excavated the responsibility to our neighboring countries, namely Mozambique through the port of Maputo, as well as the Namibian port. So we're losing ground to some of the strategic points that are aligned or that are also on the coast that South Africa also is part of. Now, the problem statement is that despite the potential that we have, South Africa's freight transport system faces significant challenges in meeting the growing demand of our freight movement, especially when it comes to rail. These challenges stem from operational and infrastructural deficiencies in road, rail, and the port sector, which hindered the competitiveness of South Africa. And moreover, freight logistics infrastructure is plowed by rampant vandalism, amounting to economic sabotage. Now, there's a bit of a question on whether this is economic sabotage or not, but let's leave that to the politicians. So the genesis of the existing challenges were partly the deregulation of road, which led to disinvestment in railways by the government in the early 1980s. The road transport sector took the opportunity and is now dominating freight movement. And over the years, railway investment was at a serious backlog in terms of investment onto rail. And this versus the investments that we have on road is quite irregular. We'll see this in the coming slides where I speak to how much exactly are we plunging into road versus rail. I had the opportunity to analyze the budget yesterday, and this continues. So there's significant investment on road, and there is slight improvement on rail, but it is not to the level at which it will bring our rail to where we need it to be. Next slide. SA freight logistics crisis and economic cost of production. So the logistics crisis is plowed by a number of factors, some of which are the structural crisis, the operational crisis, the financial crisis, and the institutional crisis. Now, when we speak about the structural crisis, is that SA freight logistics environment has been plowed by structural problems, including inadequate infrastructure. We spoke to this, insufficient processes, and lack of coordination between the different modes of transportation. When we are discussing operational crises, the volume transported on rail network declined from 2017 to 2018 from 226 million tons per annum to 149.5 million tons per annum. In us restructuring the rail network and wanting to create equitable share between road and rail, we have now set the target at 250 million tons per annum. And in the year 24-25, which is the previous financial year, which has ended on the 31st of March, we were able to get 260 million tons per annum. So it is still a very slight improvement of about 10 million tons, but not significant enough for us to say we are getting to where we need to get to. The financial crisis, South Africa has forfeited an estimation of 26.7 billion US dollars in iron ore and coal export trades in 2010. And this has been gradually increasing and not declining. Transnet recorded a 5.7 billion loss in 2022 to 2023. Driven primarily by the deterioration performance of Transnet Freight Rail. So this is just to contextualize where we were and where we want to go. Little minimal progress has been made, but any progress is better than stagnation or depreciation. Institutional crisis, another crisis in the governance failures of state-owned entities. But we also know that as part of dealing with that issue, government has now put Transnet under the Department of Transport so that we are not reporting to DPE as a policymakers. So that allows us to be the policymakers and the implementers when it comes to rail. Economic cost of production, South Africa ranks amongst the highest in terms of logistics costs in the world, which is significantly higher than the global average of 7%. So our cost to logistics is standing at 14%. Now, that is very unsustainable. And the reasons for this, some of the reasons, is inadequate infrastructure, particularly when it comes to rail and some elements of road, especially the feeder networks, which is the secondary network on the roads. Inefficient processes, we've spoken about them, especially when it comes to logistics hubs and the ports, which causes delay in the movement of cargo. Now, this is where MIPA's significance should be located. Lack of coordination between the different modes of transport, so the interconnectivities and between the different modes of transport is not to the extent or the level that we need it to be as South Africa. There needs to be a greater intermodal interface, specifically between road and rail, but also with other modes of transportation, such as the pipelines as well as aviation, as we are also trying to move some commodities, especially high-value commodities, currently from road to the air. Next slide, freight logistics system performance. So where we are right now is that an efficient freight logistics system serves as a backbone of a thriving economy. Now, in our case, it is not as efficient and as effective as we need it to be. So what it does is that such a system is characterized by several key attributions, which include reduced business costs, because we need to lower the cost of doing business because it goes to the end user, which are the people that can't afford in South Africa. Prevention of cost distortions, and that's why we will hear later on when we're speaking about what we're doing with tariffs and trying to equalize that. But also the introduction of private sector participation is also allowing us to give those determination, especially when it comes to tariffs. Enhanced competitiveness, this is very, very important, because for any efficient system to be as effective as we want it to be, we need to ensure that there's private sector participation to ensure that competition lowers the cost of doing business, but also does not continue to distort the pricing mechanisms that we have on the different modes of transport. And here I'm specific to the land surface transportation, which is road and rail. Minimize the negative externalities. So a well-managed freight logistics system can significantly reduce the negative environmental and social impact that we have currently on our transportation. A skilled workforce and resource utilization, effective resource utilization. And I'm happy that the Minister of Finance spoke to this, that the government will be having a program of ensuring the adequate resource utilization in the country to cut away corruption and all the other mayhem that's happening with the lack of utilization or proper utilization of the resources that we have. And that's both human and also financial and capital. Collaborative governance, effective coordination and collaboration between the different spheres of government. As you know, that in South Africa, we have an IGR system, which is intergovernmental relations, where we need to understand the responsibility of the municipalities, of the province and national, but also across the board between the governments, our responsibility as Department of Transport, together with our SOEs and other departments that play a critical role in the movement of commodities. Ideal modal split, this one is very critical, specifically when we're talking about road rail split and the equitable share between the two modes of transportation, that we need to be cognizant of the fact that road will always have an effective and efficient role to play, but rail needs to take on its direct responsibilities as the primary mover, particularly of bulk commodities in the country. Compliance enhancing regulatory framework, we do have a regulation framework in South Africa. We have got all that. The issue is compliance and the distortion of whose responsibility it is to ensure that that compliance prevails and is as effective as needs be. Next slide. Now, the South African state of logistics, I think we can move right through this slide very swiftly. So South Africa is ranked highly in terms of infrastructure in the slide before that. After this one, thank you so much. Infrastructure dimension in Africa, but that's historical. We may be ranking high in terms of our road network. Previous slide, please. Previous one. Thank you. But it doesn't help if it's not effectively assisting us to be the gateway into Africa or to move commodities domestically in an efficient and effective way. So despite this potential, the transport is becoming a gateway into the African market is being stagnated by the challenges that we face in countries. And these challenges, as I said, the infrastructural and as well operational. But over the years, the railway investment has been one of the greatest inhibitors to us ensuring that the logistics system is efficient and working. The major problem that we have within the logistics system is the ineffectiveness and the inefficiency of rail, and to a certain extent of the port system, which does not allow us to continue to think that we can be a gateway to Africa because we are marred with those challenges. Now, to this effect, the presidency developed the National Freight Logistics Crisis Committee, which reports to OV. We know that last week we had phase 2 of OV. We'll speak to that when we're dealing with interventions to date. But OV sits in the presidency and it allocates responsibilities into the logistics system of South Africa according to the responsibilities of each department, but also private sector players as well as SOEs. The next slide. Now, investment in infrastructure. I want to pass through this slide because this slide was giving or denoted initially what government had said it will do in 23-24. But with the budget speech that we had last year, this has changed quite significantly. The one thing I want to raise in this slide is that in 2023 and 2024, the allocation for roads, which is transfers and subsidies, was at 42.4 billion rand. And the same amount was to be allocated in 24-25. Now, we will just flag that because when I discuss what Minister Kodongwane said yesterday, we'll see the escalation so that we can see the differentiation and the distinctive investments into rail that the government is currently taking as of yesterday's budget speech. The targeted commodities, next slide, that we had was steel, oil, coal rather. So it was domestic coal as well as export coal, manganese, grain, timber, pulp, paper, and minerals and fuels. I won't go through the numbers as you can see them on the second part of the table, but also what we did the OD pair, so origin and destination. These were literally taken from industry players that said that these are the commodities that we currently have. We want to move them. Let's just take steel, for an example. We want to move 1 million tons per annum, and we want to move them from Mpumalanga to Durban. So the only thing that we needed to do with Transnet is say, Transnet, still, and this company wants to move the steel 1 million tons. Do you have the slots? Do you have the locomotives? Do you have the appetite for this? So this was part of the process in us delineating what actually needs to move, because we need to move from theory to practically stating categorically what can move, what must move, but also what industries have said they want to move, because it's not everyone that wants to move, because other people are now locked in contracts with road because of the deterioration of the rail network. Next slides. Now, these are strategic interventions that we set out when we developed the Freight Road Rail Migration Plan. The first one was improve management and operations of existing facilities. So we do have existing facilities, and again, MIPA plays a critical role in the utilization of the existing facilities that we currently have. And these range from intermodal inland facilities, these the rail, the road. So we do have this, but the issue is the management of existing facilities before we can discuss the probabilities of expanding the network that we have, which currently is not in the cards because, the fiscus does not have the appetite or the resources for us to do that. The second one was what I'm not going to do is we've spoken to the activities. So this table speaks about the action, the activities and actions, whose responsibility it is, and time frame. So we will disseminate this presentation so people can look at it. And remember, the Freight Road Rail Migration Plan was done before the denoting by government, the sixth administration, that now Transnet will be part of Department of Transport. So that's why you'll still see DP and Transnet, but that will obviously from this point on will be collapsed into DOT because Transnet now reports and is under DOT fully. The second one, a renewal, maintenance and preservation of critical infrastructure. I think that goes without saying. And here we've got targeted resources of rail network that we know are strategic, that need to be preserved and maintained, specifically because rail is a critical infrastructure for the country. Explore opportunities for private sector investigation. This was done through the PSP framework. which we'll deal with when we discuss our key achievements to date. And also, Ian spoke to it in his presentation. The fourth one, ensure the availability of a skilled labor pool sufficient to meet the transportation needs. I think this goes, this is very, very critical. And to this effect, we're having discussions with TITA to ensure that there is a skilled labor force that is able to meet the requirements as and when they are, the targets are being implemented. The fifth one, facilitate solutions for freight gateways and projects for national significance. This also goes without saying. And to this effect, the establishment of OV, phase 2 in particular, speaks to this, that we're facilitating the solutions for freight gateways, especially for national significance. And also to the question that was asked by Benji, that if municipalities have got strategic projects that feel should be escalated to a national level, this is the time for us to do that, because you'll find that we are looking at the national framework, but there are strategic projects that we need to deal with or escalate for municipalities. To this effect, we are dealing with the movement of wine in the Cape Winelands. So this is naturally a municipality prerogative, but because of its national importance, it needs to be escalated to a national level because it's a critical pipeline, it's a critical corridor for us to ensure trade between South Africa and our trade partners. The sixth one, utilize and promote new financing tools to incentivize private sector investments on railway infrastructure. We'll discuss this again when we're discussing TRIM as well as the PSP model. So, next slide. I think this just speaks about what we've done. So just briefly, we know that the rail network is deteriorated. We know that we are no longer being as competitive as we can be in terms of exports, and we're losing ground, as I said earlier, to our neighboring countries who are becoming very competitive. I mean, as we sit here, Maputo is busy reconfiguring its port to ensure that it takes on some of the commodities that came from South Africa. Namibia is doing the same. And, you know, in Xhosa we say, inkomo ityamathanda, which means that you bite the cow in small pieces. So it's looking more and more like our competitors and neighboring countries are beginning to bite off our trade and export small piece by small piece. And this is going to really, really cripple our ability to trade and continue to be the gateway into Africa. The roadmap for the logistics in South Africa is South Africa's government's response to this issue, and this is led by the Presidency, Department of Transport, as well as Treasury. So this initiative entails bold transformative reforms across board, which aim to pursue the developmental role of the rail and port system. The main thrust of which is to ensure the seamless movement of cargo domestically as well as regionally, as an attempt to maintain the role of South Africa as a gateway into SADC and into Africa, as well as beyond, which is the diaspora. The roadmap aims to transform the transport sector, improve system performance, regulate essential facilities, create a level playing ground, ensure capital investment, highlight this part, and effective structural reforms focusing on infrastructure, operations, investments, maintenance within rail and maritime. This sector is crucial as it underpins the national logistics affecting the movement of goods, services, and people throughout the country as well as through the borders and into Africa. Next slide. Let me apologize. This slide, number 7, was supposed to be the last slide on strategic interventions. So let me just go through it. So the other part of the strategic developments was develop data and analytical capacity, which we're currently doing with the development of the freight data bank, which we're doing with CSIR. And I apologize. So you can now skip 2 slides and go straight into regional and intercontinental. Yes, there we go. Thank you so much. SA has a number of bilateral relations with neighboring countries, which allow seamless trade and collaboration in regional relations. I mean, the Cross-Border Road Transport Agency, which is CBRTA, is an entity of the DOT and is responsible for nurturing these relations. SA is a signatory of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is called AFCTA, a trade agreement established by the African Union, which is AU, to create a single continental market for goods and services. The aim is to facilitate inter- and intra-African trade, boost economic growth, and promote competitiveness. Next slide. Now we get into the gist of things. So investments into logistics infrastructure. Maybe let's start with the growth enhancing structural reforms, which is what the roadmap has stated. Now, I'm just adding components that that are not here. The slide we're supposed to be on is called Investment into Logistics Infrastructure. And then after that, so the slide before, no, before that.
This one?
No, before this one.
15, this one?
Okay, maybe there's a slide missing. There's a slide that says investment into logistics infrastructure. Now, this is the slide. I know why it's missing, because I literally did this slide after the budget vote yesterday. So that's why it's missing. But let me read what the current investment into logistics infrastructure says. So over and above the purported 1 trillion that will be invested into infrastructure in the next 3 years. This is what now the current budget states, right? So the investments are looking at growth enhancing structural reforms. The OV second phase focuses on energy, water, logistics, and the visa regime. So we'll concentrate on the logistics component because it's 4 areas of infrastructure that will be dealt with as per the OV second phase. The new reforms will target infrastructure planning and implementation. It will remove the regulatory burden on business. So of the 402 billion for transport and logistics, 93 billion is for SANRAL, for the maintenance and rehabilitation of the national road network, which stands at 24 kilometers. 51.1 billion will be for the maintenance and refurbishment of provincial roads. 66.3 billion is allocated to PRASA, 18.2 billion for rolling stock fleet renewal programs. Now, remember, there was a slide before where I spoke about how much we had invested in 23-24 as well as 24-25. We had invested 42.4 billion. So now it has been escalated on rail to 63.3 billion. Right, which is allocated to PRASA, 18.2 billion for rolling stock and fleet renewal. 12.3 billion provisionally allocated for renewal and signaling. Now, for those of us who were listening to the budget speech very attentively, this 12.3 billion we are hoping to be able to get in the next 6 months. It is not necessarily money that is there. So for the allocation and renewal signals, it's provisionally allocated because we're hoping to be able to get it. And, some of the channels that we're going to be getting it will be through SARS collections and so on. We need more revenue for budget facilities for infrastructure, which is BFI, and PRASA rolling stock fleet renewal programs. So this money that we need, because it's currently unbudgeted for, which is for the budget facilities for infrastructure, is also money that we're hoping to get with revenue collection and other sources of funding that the Department of Finance will be looking into. Then we can stick to this slide. So progress to date. So what have we done? Now I've given you the context, the historical imbalances, the challenges, and where we are, how much we're investing. So, but what has government done? Because we need to be able to tell you, so this is how we've moved and this is where we're moving to date. So it's going to be progress to date, as well as some of our key achievements that we've had. The roadmap is being implemented by the Department of Transport, as has been approved by Cabinet in end of 2023, December 2023. It is supported by Operation Vulindlela, both phase 1, which has now ended, and phase 2, which was set 2 weeks ago, as well as Transnet. Now, Transnet reports to the Department of Transport, so that makes ease of communication and implementation. There is also visible coordination and technical execution led by the presidency with the establishment of the NLCC. So to this effect, there are weekly secretariat meetings to coordinate all reports and work streams, which is led by the PMO, which is the project management officials within the presidency. Other key collaborators include the private sector, Treasury, PRASA on rail infrastructure, as well as the freight road rail migration plan processes as led by the DOT with Transnet, as well as the Transnet Recovery Plan, the Rail Master Plan currently being developed and finalized, which also speaks to the establishment of the PSP unit, as well as the Transport Economic Regulator, as well as TRIM, which is the Transport Infrastructure Manager, which is a unit currently under Transnet. Because you know that, or remember that, we now have vertical separation where the infrastructure will be owned through TRIM by the government, and the operations will be open to the private sector as well. And those sales of slots have currently been closed in February, and with Ian's presentation, we had about 98 proposals of routes and private sector interest in that. There's also, it also must be noted that the NLCC has got 8 work streams, and of those 8 work streams, there are 2 distinct work streams. Work stream 2 that deals with road and cross-border issues, as well as work stream 4 that deals with all matters pertaining to rail that report to the NLCC on efficiency and effectiveness of the implementation of some of these strategies. We also have the Freight Road Rail Migration Plan, which was developed by the Department of Transport, which is what I'm presenting to you now. Now, our key achievements to date is that TRIM has been established as an operating division within Transnet, reporting to the DOT, and the long-term vision as envisaged. The long-term vision as envisaged in the rail policy and current draft of the rail bill currently are en route to cabinet. So we are this close to closing off and ensuring that this becomes effective and operational as soon as possible. 2024-2025 network statement has been developed and engagements with IRAC have taken place. Now, the 2025-2026 network statement is to be concluded on the 31st of May. That gives us a little bit of a week and a half. IRAC is leading the development of the recommendations to the minister on the network statement. IRAC is also developing tariff determination and tariff excess charges. I spoke about this issue when I spoke about the importance of the rail master plan and what we're doing in ensuring the continued and progressive migration into a more of a PSP process where the private sector is party to these developments. Slot sales applications were concluded, as I said, in February 2025. The PSP unit has been established and will be fully operational within DBSA, that's the Development Bank of South Africa. The Transport Economic Regulator was listed from the 1st of April 2025 as a Schedule 3A entity. It's an independent entity of the DOT, like Transnet, RTMC, CBRTA. And to this effect, the calls for board nominations went out and interviews were conducted, and we're now awaiting the minister's appointment for board members. It's also important to note that according to the Economic Regulation of Transport Act, the CEO will be appointed by that board. So as soon as the board is appointed, then the CEO will also be appointed. Then we'll now have an effective and efficient transport economic regulator that will continue to do its work. Rail freight services, request for information from potential operators has gone out and recently extended to the 31st of May 2025, which gives us like a week. It's the 22nd today, literally just a week, yes. The rail master plan is currently also being finalized by the DOT, and I think Ian spoke to that quite effectively. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you, colleagues.
Ms. Lali, thank you very much. You have given us a lot of food for thought. And while everybody, are you available for questions now?
I'm definitely available.
Okay, wonderful. So as MC, I'm going to abuse my position and ask the first question. But while everybody's thinking about their questions and putting their hands up and the rest so that we can go for it, all the members of MIPA have a common problem because they are going out and raising funds. And one of the first questions that they get asked is, will the Department of Transport, will Transnet, will the powers that be in government, the NLCC, actually use these multimodal inland ports that you're putting together? So more of a, yeah, it is a question. Would you be able to work with our chairman, Warwick Lord, and our CEO, Bertie Phillips, to come up with some sort of press release, statement, something that the MIPA members could use to assist them in their fundraising efforts?
I'm already working with you guys. I'm already working with Warwick. So we have an ongoing relationship. We have ongoing meetings to channel this. The logistics system in the country cannot work without intermodal facilities. We have tried to pressure Transnet to own some of these facilities, or owned, but they're not in use. So we need the facilities for intermodal interchange, intermodal interfaces. We cannot operate without them. I mean, I could give you examples of some that we've tried to revive that are not working. The one in the Free State is not as effective as we wanted it to be. We have We have, other ones on the N3, on the N1, those that are in Cape Town that are owned by Transnet that are not as effective as we want to be. So we cannot operate a logistics system without the intermodal interface. That's the first one. Secondly, perhaps in terms of any statement that comes from the department, it needs to come from the powers that be. And as things stand, that is the Minister of Transport, which is Mayor Barbara Christie. So in our conversations that we're having, in our meetings that we're having, we are now having conversations with the ports so that we can also look at how the port can channel some of the commodities, the intermodal interface. So as soon as we've had those conversations with the different branches in the department, the minister then will be the next point of connection so that we can then have that statement collaboratively between ourselves as government and MIPA to say, this is now what the department is saying in terms of the effectiveness of these intermodal interfaces. But the work that MIPA does actually should also be reported to NLCC. And I happen to sit in the secretariat of NLCC because, like I said, there is no effective or efficient logistics system or corridor functionality that can work with that intermodal interface. It's like saying we don't have truck stops along the corridors for truckers to have a rest and to nap. So we do understand and we do take note of the importance of the things that you're doing. And maybe let's escalate the reporting on what MIPA does to the NLCC so that there can be a bigger noise that's been made about your guys' functionality and what you guys are currently doing. Thanks, Mike.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Ms. Ladi. I note that King has asked that we share your latest version of your presentation. King, I can assure you we will share the latest version when they are placed on the internet. Are there any other questions to that very well presented and very well laid out presentation? Scotty, you must have done such a good job. Here's a question from Warwick.
Oh.
Hi, Makali. Sorry, I couldn't take the opportunity, Lawley, the opportunity hanging. And my question is exactly the same question I asked to Ian. And hopefully you've got maybe a slightly different perspective from a public sector perspective. Yeah. So what is your biggest worry at the moment with the sort of changing supply chain that we're all currently working on? So what keeps you up at night? And if you could please articulate why. Thank you.
Well, to be honest with you and quite frank, I am a bit worried about the private sector's involvement and ability and willingness to invest. Because we have seen that government's budget is literally breaking off the seams. And I feel like with all the plans that we're making as government, we do need an implementing wing. We do need the private sector, not to just come in and with the expertise, but to actually put money where their mouths lie as well. So that keeps me up at night. Like, how can we entice? And English is my second language, so if entice is not the right word, please consider that. But how can we entice, persuade, and I don't want to say coerce, but how can we involve the private sector in understanding that infrastructure development also requires them coming into the fray, and they need to be cognizant of where financially, where our fiscal policies, where our limitations are, so that we can move together in unison. And I think the only way to do that is we've mastered one way of planning with the private sector, so they're part of the NLCC, they're part of the processes, but now can we get to the nuts and bolts? Can we get to the millions, the rands and the cents? To say, how much are you willing to invest on this line? What are you hoping to move and where are you hoping to move? The other bigger problem is, can we honestly get road to understand its importance and significance, but also understand that it must not compete with rail, but rather complement rail? And I think that's one of the other things that keep me awake at night, because road is taking over and it's shooting up. And I think it's forgetting the significance and importance of rail. And it's now become more of a competitor to rail than a complementary element. So yeah, that's where I am. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Warwick and Mishali. We have a question from Juanita.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Chair. I don't know how to raise my hand, but I hope I'm audible. There's three questions that I want to ask. The ultimate design, because we want to make sure that we work with multimodal freight villages and the connection points. But we as private sector have not yet seen the ultimate design that layer the cargo flow, the trade flow, with the design that we should have in South Africa. So that would be my first question, if we maybe can have something, maybe there is studies to do that. Then the second one will become is that when private sector wants to investigate, we must probably think of an oversight role, because that is the challenge that we experience in our industry. People want to help and build, but they're too scared, and maybe, forgive me if I use the wrong word, but they're scared of corruption. So they don't know if there's a good oversight role to facilitate and to make sure that the money go into the hard infrastructure. And then my third question that I want to ask, in the logistics sector, we've got very much to do with transformation, the BE, the employment equity. And what we can see in our logistics industry, we need to have a very strong graduate program, which we can attract new talent into the logistics network. And I think maybe what I would suggest, Mike, if that's possible, that we take hands with you, with the DOT and with TITA, that we scope what could be a very good graduate program to assist all of us, because I think the skill set is for us quite right now devastating. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those questions, Monique.
The last one is an initiative that I'm willing and able to look into. I'll put in the comments my direct email address so that we can have this conversation. We are working with TITA, but anybody who wants to consider any skills development or anything to this effect, we are definitely as a department trying to work with them. So I'll take that as a comment, and as I said, I'll leave my email. The first question, the ultimate design of freight villages. So when it comes to trade, and this is the interconnectivity between government departments. So when it comes to trade, it's the DTIC that has got the responsibility. Ours is to create an enabling environment for the actual movement of commodities. So we deal with the transport element. So if you want to understand, for an example, the cargo flows or the projected growth or the projected commodities as well as tonnages, it's more the DTIC that does that. And whatever information that we get and extrapolate for our policies, we do it through them. The other thing that I spoke about is that we're developing the freight data bank. We had developed it before, but it was a static one. So what we usually did is that we would have yearly qualifications of what moves on our roads. But that doesn't help us, because what moves in 2023 to 2024 is usually different to what moves between 2024 and 2025. So we're trying to make this one a little bit less static, and we'll continuously, update it and have information that's critical coming on par. And I said we're working with the CSR, that currently does have a chart, a data flow chart that they are obviously assisting us with now. And that project should be finalized in September of this year. So it might assist that in one of these presentations, we actually do the presentation of the data bank, so you can actually see and get a feel of what moves in the country, where the blockages and the challenges are, and also the intermodal interface, especially when it comes to corridor movement. Also, they will slot in the inland depots as well to see where they are located, but also how effective and efficient they are in the entire supply chain. The second question, private sector oversight role. I can only speak for government. So because logistics is a national crisis, it's now reporting to the presidency directly. So everything that we do as a Department of Transport, we present it to the NLCC. It's like the energy crisis. So we've got two crises in the country. It's the energy crisis as well as the logistics crisis. So the oversight is now no longer necessarily only or exclusively within us DOT, but within OV. And OV is Operation Vulindlela, which sits in the presidency. So that oversight you can get any information to, especially when you're a funder. But perhaps on the other extreme end, maybe the private sector should look at having its own oversight. I don't know, I don't want to call it an entity, but some form of, people or employing people that can do their own oversight when they channel monies to the government, so that they can actually be able to trace them. If we're still having those trust issues, because I do understand that there is a trust deficiency to avoid the corruption and the scandals, and making sure that the money, is channeled to exactly where it needs to go. So besides the OV in the presidency, maybe the private sector should consider having those kinds of, I don't know what you call them, a small organization, an entity, a unit, or people that you employ to actually look at where your money goes when you have invested money, example, into rail infrastructure and other things. Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Matlale. I'm going to come in there. We have a coal users group, we have an iron ore users group, and one of the things that Juanita has proposed and that we're working on is to have a container corridor group And I would appeal to everybody that is interested in joining that group and is working on the container corridor to reach out to Warwick or Bertie or myself and put up their hands and say they are willing to do some work on that. So everybody, all hands on deck. We need all the help we can get. Maslali, that presentation was wonderful. Good. You know, normally Harry would give out a present, but all I can do is say your check is in the mail.
I'll be looking for it. But can you also make me an honorary member to the groups, please?
We will
Because it's
do that.
business unusual.
Well, I can't speak for the chairman and the CEO, but I'll leave it to them, and hopefully they will make you an honorary member. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the comfort break. We're running 15 minutes late, but we've got 20 minutes to catch up because the gentleman who was going to talk about funding an inland terminal is unfortunately not available. So it's just after 11. Can we reconvene at 11:15 so that we can listen to the wise words from Jacob van Rensburg on the main SADC logistical and economic challenges? Thank you very much. Jan, if you can put up the program until 11:15. Thank you very much. Greetings and salutations. It's 11:15. Is everybody ready? Can we start? As we said, our funding of inland terminals, our speaker is no longer available. Unfortunately, hopefully we can accommodate him at another time because I think that is a critical discussion that needs to be had. And the World Bank are experts in doing this kind of thing. So, Jacob, are you ready to start? And are you going to do your own slides? Let me know. Are you there?
Perfect. Testing the audio. Mike, can you hear me? Can you see me?
Wonderful, loud and clear. Thank you very much.
I'll be happy to navigate my own slides. Let me.
It just frees up Jan to do all the other things, the other 101 things that he needs to do during the transport forum. So thank you very much for that, Jan.
Perfect. Can you see my presentation?
Beautiful, 100%.
Perfect. So good morning, colleagues, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to present. I think let me just start off by saying our thoughts and prayers are with Harry. We wish him a speedy recovery. And then also congratulations to the composition of the program, Mike, Bertie, Warwick as well. I think it's a very nice logical flow. To that, it's a great pity that we don't have the World Bank to talk about funding, because it seems that it's also a very pertinent consideration on the tongue of many of our speakers and participants here. So my name is Jacob van Rensburg. I serve as the Head of Research and Development at SAF, the Southern African Association of Freight Forwarders. And today we've just heard from the South African view, so I'll be sharing a regional perspective on the key economic and logistical challenges facing the SADC region, as well as proposing some strategic responses that we believe can shape more sustainable and inclusive outcomes. So this presentation is structured around 6 core themes. We begin with an economic overview of the SADC region, followed by a logistics overview, and then a very pertinent and important matter is the rationale for a modal shift. And then we tackle 3 pressing challenges. Firstly, the need for greater job creation, especially here in South Africa and our neighboring countries. Secondly, the imperative to reduce logistics cost. And then thirdly, and perhaps speaks to the creation of MIPA as well, is the revitalization of our regional rail system. And then I'll also offer some thoughts on the way forward, perhaps a strategy or two to build on collaboration, data. That's something that we do a lot here at SAF, and integrated investment planning. So a lot of the information that I will touch here today is taken from our weekly cargo movement report that you can see there on your screen. It's a report that's now in its 5th year, and it's become a real industry staple, a collaborative effort between many people and entities, authored by ourselves, SAF. I'm the lead author of that, and its purpose is really to provide an overview of the more frequent movement of goods in and out of our country. So to the colleagues not interested, I do know it's shared on the Transport Forum. We can share that with the colleagues as well. So first, the SADC region, as we know, comprises of 16 member states with a combined population of about 380 million people, of which a lot of people are young. It's a young population. This regional bloc spans a vast geographic and developmental spectrum, you know, from small islands such as Seychelles, Mauritius, to larger resource-rich inland states such as, you know, Zambia and the DRC and the like. So the economic performance across these countries has been mixed of late. You can see there on your screen some growth rates. On the one hand, we see strong growth in countries like DRC, Malawi, Mozambique, Zambia, Tanzania, all of them registering growth rates above 5%. These countries are currently benefiting from some commodity booms, some structural reforms, and in some cases, improvements in political stability, something very important for the region. But then on the other hand, we see several economies, notably Angola, and then here in the south, Lesotho and South Africa, we are growing less than 2%. Structural constraints, high unemployment, policy uncertainty, infrastructure bottlenecks are at the heart of this divergence. Trade patterns also tell us a compelling story. Our economies remain overly dependent on raw material exports, with very limited local processing and beneficiation, as you can see there on your screen as well. Intra-SADC trade still accounts for less than 25% of total trade, revealing a stark underdevelopment of regional value chains. And if we compare that number, you know, to other regional trading blocs, ASEAN or the EU, very good examples, where we see intra-regional trade often exceeds 50%. Here in South Africa or in the SADC region, it's about, you know, 21 to 22%, growing, but very slowly. And then lastly, we must also mention this fact. Yesterday we had our budget, but, you know, we must be honest about the macro risks in our region, not only in South Africa, but the rest of the SADC countries, ballooning public debt, exchange rate volatility, underwhelming levels of FDI, particularly in logistics intensive sectors. Hence, once again, the creation of an intermodal approach. We like to call this a synchro modal, all of the different modes working in synchronicity. And then perhaps some investor confidence, hence why we are having these discussions about oversight committees, funding proposals, and the like. So a mixed bag really economically. So while there are some growth opportunities existing in the region, they are uneven and vulnerable to global shocks, as we've realized in the last couple of years. So in this context, modern, integrated and cost-effective logistics infrastructure is not just a luxury, it's a prerequisite for long-term growth. And I'll speak a bit later to that as well. So let's shift our attention to logistics, particularly the structural features that shape the flow of goods across the region. On your screen, you can see the interplay between low distance, speed, and their relationship. And I'm sure a lot of the colleagues have seen this slide before. It's a very pertinent one in our landscape and talks to this important relationship between these factors. And the reality is that over significant land mass areas, such as the case not only in our country, but also in the region, rail transport, as you can see there in the heart of that graph, it should, in theory at least, be the preferred land transport mode. However, it is very well established that road transport dominates our freight movement in the region, accounting for approximately 80% of total trade volume. And this is largely due to the flexibility and relative simplicity of road logistics. But unfortunately, as Michali also spoke to, it comes at a high cost. So we are talking about a system that is very much economically insufficient and inefficient over long distances. It's also environmentally unsustainably and socially problematic due to, as we've seen in our case, road degradation, congestion, and various safety risks. So in short, our current logistics profile in our country and also in the region is not future fit. So moreover, the interaction between logistics and economic growth is mutually reinforcing, and the next slide will speak to that. But our reality is clear, is that poor logistics inflates trade costs, it reduces competitiveness and limits the flow of goods and services. And this is especially true in the SADC region, where we have many landlocked countries. You can think of Botswana, Zimbabwe, Malawi, where inefficient corridors act almost as a tax on trade. So our systems, they operate obviously across multiple scales, national, corridor, and regional, as you can see the top right of your screen. But importantly, colleagues, I think it's without alignment that we often result in fragmented infrastructure planning, perhaps some inconsistent regulatory environment, and reduced and redundant investments. And what we need here really is a strategic shift both on the modal side, MIPA and integrated logistics, but also very much on the institutional side, how we design this network. So we must move from a very much a reactive road-centric model to something that is an integrated, multimodal, synchromodal logistics system that prioritizes rail for long distance haul freight, especially on the bulk side, which still dominates our economies here in the SADC region. So this modal shift, it's not only about cost. Of course, it's an important factor, but it's about creating a certain resilience in our logistics network, reducing also carbon, and then unlocking spatial development, which is still very much underutilized in our region. So the time really has come to realign our infrastructure planning and policy frameworks around this imperative. So now some theory, and I like these two graphs, which explain the relationship between the economic growth and development, and then trade, supply chains, and logistics. So there on your screen on the left-hand side, we have a funnel which shows socio-economic growth and development. Top down, and then logistics bottom up. So efficient logistics, which the literature shows very well, is a critical factor in socio-economic development, socioeconomic development is, of course, highly dependent on sustained economic growth, something that's currently lacking in South Africa, unfortunately, of late. And international trade within this landscape is a significant driver of this growth and development. Indeed, globally speaking, some 60% of our global GDP has got a trade component, is trade. So for trade to smoothly flow, it requires effective functioning of global value chains and participation in these chains. And this is true for most countries and is certainly true for South Africa and the region. If we cannot participate in these chains, we cannot reap the benefits. So improved logistics performance at the bottom, the vehicle of trade, so to speak. We always speak about the architects of the supply chain, the vehicle that allows goods to flow. This increases the efficiency in the trading, reducing the time and cost to trade, which can then result in increase in the volume of goods and ultimately spill over in that economic growth and socio-economic growth and development. So this relationship, it's very much circular and direct and positive between the concepts. Then on the right-hand side, this is where we are at. Most of the colleagues in this call, we are logisticians, transport, trade and logistics. So if we think about the logistics system, they operate at different intersecting and or aggregate organizational and geographical levels, encompassing critical actors. So if you think there at the bottom left of that graph on the right-hand side, at the most basic, a logistics system is as simple as an individual consumer ordering a good sourced locally. You can think about, your Uber Eats or your Checker 60, whatever the case may be. It's a very micro scale. But at the most complex, a logistics system encompasses all the actors at all the geographical levels. And within this scope, firms, they represent the dominant actor in this system, and they are the consumers of logistics. And indeed, here it's important to distinguish between the users and the providers of logistics. In most cases, the users include all the role players, both private and public, and they relate to the shippers, the carriers, the freight forwarders, the clearing agents, the terminal operators, the rail runners, the multimodal hubs. They use this system, but the providers, one should say, is the logistics providers. They include typically the infrastructure, so the roads, the ports, the airports, the dry ports, and other related things to spatial connectivities, the providers, the supply side of logistics versus the demand side, the users. So these considerations, colleagues, are very key, as national systems are therefore the providers of infrastructures and spatial connectivities, whereas business logistics are the users. So that kind of sets the theoretical theme. So to the challenges that we currently see in the region, and they are very pertinent for South Africa as well. And Michali spoke to some of them. Ian as well gave a very comprehensive overview of the NLCC and what they are doing. So the number one here, which I will tackle today, is job creation. And I think it's very important for us in South Africa. So high unemployment continues to plague much of our region, especially in Eswatini and South Africa. Unemployment rates as a percentage of the total labor force, these are World Bank stats, they exceed 30%, with youth unemployment particularly severe. And I've tabled a summary of what the literature says about increasing employment in various sectors in the region, but we will focus here on logistics, which holds in the region an enormous potential as a job-creating engine. So as I mentioned in that previous slide, logistics is not merely about moving goods, it's also about enabling production, trade, services, and it acts as a growth multiplier that touches multiple sectors. Think about our country, manufacturing, retail, agriculture, and especially, the massive increase in e-commerce. So if we look at the region, SADC Agenda 2063's modeling is very instructive in that investment in education, infrastructure, and especially digitalization have the potential to lift millions out of poverty in our region. And within this landscape, logistics sits at the intersection of all of these factors, especially digital logistics offers a very high potential pathway for youth unemployment. We saw that especially in the East African community, where the adoption of e-commerce, of digital banking, of all digital solutions for business problems is very high, not so high in our region, but it offers a very high potential pathway. And this can be through many, many things, such as, fleet management, warehouse automation, data analysis, which is pertinent to what we do here in my department and at SAF, or say e-commerce fulfillments. And these sectors, they really require new skills, but are also enabled to rapidly employ and are scalable, important for our region. And there you can see some of the outcomes there in those tables. So what we need to tackle this challenge of the job creation is really to promote regional skills alignment. We spoke about data earlier today, and various capacity building programs, very important. And, this can also, within the space of cross-border trading, it can be cross-border training centers. Secondly, we must also very much encourage employment-friendly logistics policies, such as the support for SMMEs, warehousing, last-minute services, whichever the case may be. It's very pertinent in our region that in the logistics space, some 80% of all the actors, if I go back to my previous slide, active in our landscape are SMMEs in the SADC region, so a lot of smaller players. And then, of course, we must ensure that the infrastructure development is inclusive. It connects those rural areas and small enterprises to the trade corridors, which is very much the approach that we need in the SADC region. So in short, summarizing this challenge is that logistics must not only be seen as an economic input, colleagues, but rather as a social input. If it's designed and governed well, it can make significant dents in our unemployment challenges. So challenge number 2, colleagues, is lowering the national and regional logistics costs. Mihlali also spoke to that a bit. And we see that in our region, in the SADC region, logistics costs are among the highest in the world, ranging from about 20 to 60% of the landed cost of a product. I think Professor Jan Havengaaf, the Gain Group, his analysis has showed for South Africa, there's about a 53% component of logistics in the final landed cost of a product in our country, which is especially high. I think Mihlali also mentioned the fact that our logistics cost, it ranges about 12 to 13%. We are very keen to do another revised state of the logistics index to provide more up-to-date figures. But, it's comparatively with, I have to add this, developing countries, it's not that bad if you look at the entire, SADC region, but it's on the high side, especially if we compare ourselves to, say, OECD countries, where the costs are typically below 10%. So the reasons are well known and spoken about in this forum. Typically delays at border post and terminal in our region are some of the most busiest border posts. The Wombo has improved a lot in the last couple of years, but we see Beitbridge, Kasambulesa, Chirundu, all of these border posts, we see delays in excess of a day. And that's very, very costly to our logistics network. We also see other constraints, such as informal payments and non-tariff barriers, poor road conditions, inadequate infrastructure. And then importantly, why we are here mostly is the lack of a comprehensive rail alternative to satisfying the freight demand in the region, and also inefficient fleet utilization due to empty backhauls in our region, if we talk about road, but also pertaining to rail, and then, of course, poor coordination. So these costs, colleagues, they are not only borne by the logistics service providers, us in the room, they're also passed down to the producers, the exporters, and ultimately to the end consumer. Very, very detrimental for our socio-economic growth and development in the region. So one of the most effective ways to tackle, and to address some of these challenges, and of course, colleagues, we don't only want to talk about the challenges, but present some possible solutions. And that happens through data. So what we are producing and proposing is, corridor performance monitoring systems that can shine a light on the inefficiencies and the help government and operators need to track progress over time. This has happened within the NLCC, it's happened within SAF as well. So it's very important that we track these things. Cross-border harmonization of standards, and for instance, axle load limits and clearance protocols can also reduce administrative friction. Perhaps at this juncture, colleagues, it's important to perhaps say that we have a very important launch on next week, Friday, the launch of the Logistics Accountability Score, which is a joint venture by SAF, by the CSIR, and by CRICMA, and hosted by the World Bank in creating a self-regulating, governance kind of tool within our logistics space, especially pertaining to road transport, which can, then shift some of the risk from the system to the operators, and can be a very sustainable approach going forward. And then obviously also, investment in the weighbridges, electronic use of pre-clearance platforms and the like that will reduce cost and time to trade. So if we summarize this challenge, is the fact that ultimately logistics must be treated as a strategic asset within the space of trade, transport, and economic growth and development, and not only as a sunk cost. I think it's often seen as that. And then, of course, the efficiency should be seen rather as a proxy of the health of an economy. A functioning logistics system equals growth and development. It's very, very clear, colleagues. Then the last, or the third challenge I want to highlight in our region is the SADC rail system. So the decline of the rail system across SADC is one of the most pressing but under-discussed challenges, perhaps not today, but typically under-discussed challenges in regional development. The region has about 60,000 kilometers of track. Around half of that is in South Africa. And here on your screen, you can see the disparaging views if we compare the South African system to the rest of SADC. Some regional corridors, but not a comprehensive system whatsoever. But importantly, if we look at the freight data, is the fact that rail's market share has dropped dramatically from around 50% in the region in the 1980s. Fast forward 30, 35, 40 years to today, it's below than 15% in most countries. Why? We have tackled some of these issues, but they relate to three main factors: chronic underinvestment, state-owned monopolies, limited capacity to innovate and to build and to invest. And then obviously the most important thing for the creation also in this context of MIPA is the lack of interoperability between the systems and across borders then also. So revenue decline in this area is both a cause and a consequence. Is low market share results in poor service, which in turn further reduces demand on the rail side. Very cyclical behavior. But of course, colleagues, there are some hope. Targeted actions can revitalize the sector. Regulatory reforms, such as we've seen in our country, perhaps some actors will say too slow, but it's happening. The ball is rolling. The opening of access regimes and linking performances to concessions can attract private investment. That's very important for our landscape. Regional integration, if we take the regional view, of planning and operations can also ensure that there is a better alignment between the corridors and the terminals, and then investment, and I'll speak to that in the next slide, like the one on the Lobito and the Beira corridors, through various financial vehicles, including PPPs or blended finance, can yield quick wins. So rail is the only mode capable of absorbing long-haul bulk freight cost effectively. This is a well-known fact, colleagues. And without it, the road network, as we've seen, as is our reality, will continue to degrade. Emissions will rise, and we will miss out on a key enabler of regional integration. As I've mentioned, about 22% in our region, intra-regional trade, which is quite low, globally speaking. So some projects, very encouragingly, let me briefly touch on these strategic projects currently in our region. First, the Ponta Railway, a 1,700-kilometer corridor linking Botswana and Zimbabwe to Mozambique's coast, estimated at some $6.5 billion investment. The project will link landlocked countries with direct access to the Indian Ocean. One can say perhaps at the detriment of South Africa, and we saw this in some of the figures, that we've seen a reduction in our share of the regional trade. Colleagues, and here perhaps it's once again very pertinent to emphasize the fact that trade will flow. And we must ensure that South Africa, if we look at these corridors and the projects, that we enable our logistics network to be an enabler of this trade flow, because otherwise it will flow to other areas of the region. But of course, if we look at a regional approach, these are very important. Second, perhaps just briefly, the Tanzania-Burundi standard gauge railway, currently under construction. It will connect Burundi to Dar es Salaam via 367 kilometers line. Some investment of in excess of $2 billion to unlock Burundi's mineral exports and enhance regional integration. And then third, an important project also in Tanzania is a 30-year concession that will inject some, 1.4 billion estimated investment in the aging Tanzania-Zambia line, something we very much need in South Africa as well. It will improve the infrastructure upgrades and add new rolling stock to restore some capacity, safety and reliability. So colleagues, very importantly, and once again, why we are here, these projects, if delivered, and to specification, they can change the logistics landscape with, freight villages, multimodal, synchromodal, as we like to refer them to, an integrated system, and result in trade and investment growth, something that we really need. So what's needed? Just offering some more strategic mentions is, to bring this all together, we need to adopt really a data-driven, scientific approach to regional logistics. Too often, as we see, in some forums, decisions are made without the evidence, or they are driven by the political consideration, the will. But, analytics can guide us to smarter investments, perhaps better operational choices. And then, colleagues, secondly, we must embrace a regional this regional approach, regionalism in practice, not just on paper. SADC protocols, they do exist, we can say, and this has been our experience as well. Implementation of them have been inconsistent, but a regional logistics strategy grounded in practical collaborations, like the reason why we are here, is long overdue. Perhaps thirdly, we need to prioritize investment based on economic impact. So colleagues, that means the corridors that move the most cargo or connect the most economically active zones must come first. The low-hanging fruit, so to speak. Fragmentation, as we saw in our network as well. We speak about right-sizing the network. Fragmentation can be very much an expensive exercise. And then finally, I can also conclude, in addition to what you see on the screen, public and private sectors must work together. Collaboration is key. It's pertinent. I think the doors have never been as open as they are now. Our collaboration and the feedback that Ian expertly gave about the NLCC, it's very encouraging for our sector. That's very important. But all of this, to bring that to come together, it's really logistics is what we can say the bloodstream of regional development, not only in our country, in our regions, but also in the region. And we cannot afford any blockages any longer. And I want to just highlight something here at the end, and Michali also spoke about that, is the AfCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, which is, one can say, you know, a once in a generation opportunity. And if we fast track this, we have the opportunity to link together over 1.3 billion people in a market that's, you know, 55 countries, more than $3.4 trillion. You know, there's really the potential to boost intra-African trade amongst ourselves by more than 50%, and importantly, promote export diversification, drive industrialization, so less raw materials, more beneficiation, you know, across the continent, and logistics can really be this bloodstream. But of course, the promise of the AfCFTA will not materialize without that functioning logistics system that we talk about. Markets can only integrate and they can only move up in the value add if the goods can move. So tariff reductions, you know, the focus very much on the AfCFTA has been on, you know, the tariff reductions and the concessions, but they are truly, as a bottom line, meaningless if containers sit idle at congested borders, or if transport costs make trade unviable between our regional countries. That's why the issues we've discussed today are not peripheral. They are very much foundational. So let me conclude, colleagues, by saying that SANEC has a lot of raw potential, demographically, geographically, and economically, to become a global growth zone. But it must act decisively on logistics. The time for coordination, innovation, and investment in logistics is now. Thank you, colleagues. I conclude here.
Jacob, that was a mouthful. And we are stunned. We are still trying to take it all in. And we look forward to downloading your presentation. Will that person please mute? Will you please mute? Ma'am, will you please mute? Thank you. Jacob van Rensburg, that was inspirational. You know, we've had Ian, we've had Maslali, and now we've had you talking about SADC. And it is so exciting. What lies in front of us is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and we have to embrace the Africa Free Trade Zone, and we have to embrace sustainable logistic systems for the SADC region. Ladies and gentlemen, are there any questions? I doubt it. But are there any questions? Barbara, your hand is up. Please, you are first.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Jacob, and to Mihlali for excellent presentations. I just am concerned, raising a concern, because as Mike just summarized, the opportunities are enormous. That we move away from this concept of other regions taking things from us from a logistics perspective. Without competitiveness, no matter how good your infrastructure is, no matter how many beautiful multimodal facilities you have, if you're not competitive and efficient, logistics users will not use you. And we are not losing when our logistics supply chains move as fast as they possibly can, even if it is not in South Africa. We have got to move away from this protective kind of protectionist approach to regional integration. It is so important because our neighboring countries depend on that. Jobs in our countries, in our country, depend on regional integration. We are not an island, and we must move away from this concept that South Africa must do it all itself. Yes, we have to. Every country has to do it for itself, but it's because the region benefits. And I really would make a plea that we get our heads out of the sand. I'm not suggesting apologies if it sounds like I'm saying your heads are in the sand, but I think a lot of the time, particularly when you hear how little bilateral engagement is happening between countries in the region, that we really get our heads out of the sand and stop looking at just our own picture. The regional picture is very important. Thank you.
Jacob, would you like to comment?
I would love to comment, Mike, and I think this is a very pertinent discussion. I couldn't agree more with what Barbara said. I think some anecdotes I want to share within this space is very much within that realm is the fact that trade will flow. We cannot be only concerned about what we have within our bounds and our control. Trade will flow. To give a very important example, we saw recently in the global space, in the global shipping lines, reassigning a lot of capacity to the regions that are growing. And we saw the first time ever that one of the ultra large containerized vessels call at a African port which is not in Morocco or in Djibouti, which serves as some of the main regional transshipment hubs. A 24,000 foot TEU equivalent vessel, so 24 being able to handle 24,000 containers, called at the West African port in Ghana at Tema, which was the first of its kind. And this was as a response to the US tariffs on China. Immediately, the shipping lines, they reassigned that vessel to a growing region. And if we consider that as one small example within our space, we saw in the last 4 years, our connectivity, so us being South Africa, our connectivity with the rest of the world being reduced by 25%. Now, this not only means capacity, it means frequency of access to markets, and it means that assigned capacity is going elsewhere. And we are seeing that very slowly with Maputo, with Walvis Bay, which is developing at a very rapid pace, and also to Beira and then to Dar and the rest of the SADC community. So it is very pertinent that we forget about only looking at what we have, because trade will flow. So just some anecdotes to add to what Barbara said, to which I can't agree more. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for that, Jacob. Anything else? Anybody else with a question or a comment?
Mike, if you don't mind, I'd like to come in and just sort of address Jacob as well as what Barbara said, in that my experience is exactly what Barbara said, and obviously a lot more microcosm of it than sort of a regional discussion. But as soon as we started looking at our inland port projects as property development projects and a fixed geography, we started having problems. As soon as we understood that it was a network, and supply chain is a network, it's not about a fixed geography or a fixed area. It's about how they interact and interoperate. You start seeing the value of the supply chain, and you start thinking about a supply chain as an actual chain in your mind. And if you think about it, a chain doesn't necessarily have a geography. It's as long as it's connected the one point to the other. And then once again, to fill in, we're only as strong as our weakest link, which means we need to go through the process of making sure each one of these links or knuckles or friction points in the supply chain is looked at, so that we can start having this seamless or frictionless supply chain, which brings down cost and efficiency. So I thought I'd just highlight that from a sort of a very micro perspective, that we've even noticed that at the Catteridge Inland Port. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Warwick. I'm not seeing any other hands up or questions, and we are now a little bit over time. So we're going to move to the MIPA members, and they will all present on their terminals. We've had a extremely stimulating presentations and discussions so far, and let's hope that that continues. If it's okay with everybody, we will run a little bit past 1300 hours. 1 o'clock this afternoon, but I think giving this important topic enough airtime is fairly important. We still have more than 100 persons on the call, and I see David has his hand up. David, your question, please.
Yeah, thanks. Just first of all, a comment to support what both Barbara and Jacob said. But for Jacob, how do we go about ensuring that the political situation, the political approach of other countries, and had some experience. I'm particularly, as an example of a regional road bond, which if there was one in place, or when there is one in place, the need well, one of the non-tariff barriers at border posts would disappear. And I'm not sure where we are on that at the moment. I was very much involved about 10 years ago, and we just got one brick wall after another put in front of by not only countries such as Zambia, they were quite responsible for that, the DRC too, but also this country, all in one way or another finding some either political or economic or financial reason why a road bond, a global road bond or regional road bond wouldn't work. A great deal of work was done unsuccessfully at the time. I don't know where we are on that, but that kind of fluidity across border posts is what we have to have if we want this regional development to go. And there's such potential, and Jacob, you made that absolutely clear. But I just wonder where we go in terms of convincing governments, our own and other governments. This is just so critical, and it can be done. That kind of thing can be done in terms of facilitating border movements, which at the moment in some places are still continue to be way too long, which is what you mentioned. Thanks.
You're on mute, Mark.
Jacob, would you like to answer that, or is it just a comment?
I think it's a very difficult question, Dave, and I think there are some colleagues on the call that would probably provide a better answer than myself. But it's such an important thing, in that the fact that we have on paper several things, such as the regional customs transit guarantee, along the north-south corridor, linking, from Durban all the way up through Beitbridge to Mombasa, Lusaka, and the rest, and these have been piloted, and they have shown, to improve the efficiency and aid the complexity that we have within the region, to create a single regional guarantee is pertinent. We have the transport schedules as part of the ASCFTA, and these are the critical building blocks that we need to build to create this reality, because I think the feedback on the ground within the various constituencies, I'm thinking about Mike and Cage with the SATA, Barbara can comment on this as well, is that it's often not the case that the single transit guarantee allows free movement from one border, from one country to the rest within the region, even though that we have on paper these schedules. So there are still some multiple national customs bonds, so there's not yet one perfectly functioning standardized approach, and I think that's what is very important, not only within the regional communities but within the AFCFTA as a whole. So I think it's pertinent that, like you said, Dave, is that political will. If we don't get that across the line, it's not going to happen. So as I cannot provide much more than feedback to say that the powers that be, we really need to get this working at a very practical, functional, logistical level. I'll stop here. I don't know whether Barbara would perhaps, or Unita would want to add to that. Thank you, Mike.
Jacob, thank you. We have a question from Slapedi, and Barbara also has her hand up. Slapedi, can you ask your question? I hope I'm pronouncing your name correct.
Thank you very much. My question is direct, not really specifically to Jacob, but to whoever is able to respond. I'm from the city of Johannesburg, and we are developing an economic growth strategy, an LED strategy. how do we successfully integrate the economic growth strategy to the logistical component in the context of regional trade?
Jacob?
Well, I think I can reiterate some of the things that we've spoken about, especially what Barbara has said, and to Warwick's point as well in terms of, the logistics flow. I think it's very important to realize where the logistics network is. And I've mentioned this in the presentation, is that we need to give credence to the low-hanging fruit. So with other words, the high volume corridors. So the development needs to allow the high flow of the networks working. To take an example, our rail network in South Africa, we did not really realize perhaps the reduction in freight because our heavy haul export lines, the iron ore, the coal, the chrome, the magnetite, and the manganese to some extent, still functioned at a relative level, in the mid-20 teens to 2020 about. Subsequently, those also dropped. And there we saw the tide really going out to say that we are laying bare. So I think it's very important that the strategy and the focus and the development must fit on the practical level of the logistics network. So where are cargo flowing? And we can help that strategy by feeding in the data. And it's very encouraging. Michali spoke about this. The CSIR reviving the National Logistics and Freight Movement Data Bank, which is very pertinent to aid to that strategy. So perhaps not a direct answer, but we must work with what we have available here and look at those corridors and those networks that, where the vast majority of the cargo is flowing currently. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Barbara, you
Sorry,
have a
maybe
lot
just
to
to add.
say, and you've got some good news for us. Thank you.
Yes, the Triple TFP has made some really excellent progress. I've put a note in the chat, and I'm just looking for the link. The updates on the progress are made twice a month, in the first Thursday and last Thursday of the month, by the SADC Secretariat, who are the custodians of the Triple TFP program. And the corridor transport monitoring system is addressing many of those issues, not fast enough in my view, but it's happening at a regional, hugely regional level. It's the tripartite, not just SADC. But I will stick those details in the chat. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Can I just add one point to the gentleman from Johannesburg, that there's an existing Johannesburg Intermodal Planning Committee that deals with these issues. So on an internal basis, which is Johannesburg as a city, Gauteng as a province, but also looks at the interface with the trading partners that we have. So maybe he could just find out from the transport department as well as the planning department in Johannesburg, because that does exist. It's called the Johannesburg Intermodal Planning Committee, and it deals with the logistics of the city. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Mhlali, and I'm sure that the MIPA members that are working on multimodal terminals in Johannesburg would also like to join that committee. So there is a lot of knowledge and commitment around, so we can assist Johannesburg with their planning. Right, without further ado, Warwick, over to you on Cato Ridge. We are now after 12 o'clock, so we're going to have to speed things up. Thank you very much.
Cool, thanks, Mark, and thank you, colleagues. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, guys, I did get promised I'd have 10 to 15 minutes. Due to time constraints, I'm going to move it along. So please bear with me, and I will have time at the end of all the MIPA presentations in order to have a group question session so that we can walk through this a little bit quicker. Next slide. I suppose I have to move that. Okay, so just to put it into perspective, what you see on the screen at the moment are the various MIPA terminals that have just been placed on the map of South Africa and Africa, and shows you how they interconnect. This is very important because when we start talking about inland ports, this ability to offer clients interconnectivity as well as choices with how they want the supply chain to operate now becomes critical. If you ever look at the block or the sort of extract on the right-hand side, you can see the blow-up of the sort of Durban to Gauteng legs and how it's currently looking to be addressed by both Transnet and the World Bank. And obviously, you can see two of the sort of inland port projects being Tambo Springs and Cater Ridge on this plan. And you can start seeing how it ties into the public sector's ports or Transnet's ports, as well as back of port facilities at the moment. And if we look at the right port terminals, Joburg Trade Port, Bayhead, as well as Durban Logistics Park, which is the old Durban port, the old Durban Harbours, old Durban Airport, sorry, is all based on Transnet and public sector. So what we are seeing as MIPA and MIPA members is there's an opportunity in this space to now become private sector operators in which was previously only a public sector space. And this leads us to the excitement that you will sort of hear, which is quite evident by the presentation so far. Just quickly, why multimodalism and why choose it? And I really like the synchro multimodalism that Jakob brought in, as when we talk about multimodalism, it's the ability to move cargo over multiple transport formats. And if we talk about multimodalism, it's now synchronizing those movements so they happen efficiently and effectively as possible with as little friction in the complete supply chain. So the big takeouts, and I think this has been hammered to death, so I'm not going to spend much time on it, but basically we reduce transport costs as we bring a systematic approach, specifically when we start talking about bigger and more cargo, shorter delivery times, and normally that's not considered to be part of the train's benefits. However, some of the clients that we've spoken to is a truck will beat a train on the first load every single time. However, on the last load, the train will beat the trucks every single time, as we are moving equivalent of 50 or 100 trucks at a time between the 2 points, and therefore you can handle one train as opposed to 50 or 100 trucks. The second or the last element is then enhanced reliability as well. As we bring in more paths for cargo to flow along, so we give clients better choices, but also enable a more robust supply chain that can accommodate any shocks to it. And us being in South Africa, and specifically some of us down in KZN, we have to become quite adaptable to these shocks, and almost they're part of the normal, as opposed to sort of adverse effects or events. Quickly, what I'd like to just spend is a little bit of time of the construct of how specifically a back of port inland port works, and sort of the rationale and viability of it. Now, typically what has been said, and this is me sort of drilling down into the specifics, whereas Jakob and the previous speakers all spoke about the sort of regional context or wider context. I'd like to actually just highlight quickly on the drawing you see on the screen how it actually works. Because what everyone would like to do, and this is most cargo owners, would love their cargo to go from destination, or from the origin point to the destination point directly, i.e. a truck picks it up from the factory, delivers it either to the boat or alternatively to another factory. However, these are great when we don't have the congestion or amounts of cargo we currently have flowing through the various Durban ports, which means not every single truck can get into the boat stack efficiently and effectively, and we end up having huge amounts of congestion. It's a bit like when you have the fire alarm going off in your building and every single person in the building tries to run out the single entrance or three all at the same time. As soon as you have this mass evacuation of cargo or people through a point, that's then the pressure point and the issue that has to be resolved. We now have all of this congestion, specifically in our seaport areas, and in my example, specifically around the Durban and eThekwini CBD, because of everyone trying to rush out the building that's on fire all at the same time through a single entrance. We have to amend and change our operational philosophy around that to ensure that we now get significantly greater volumes efficiently and cost effectively through the port. So the idea that the stockpiles and the sort of shock absorber in the supply chain is then handled at the inland ports, which means that cargo can then dwell there longer. It has more space. And if we tie into the cargo discussion or the SARS customs discussion we had a little bit earlier, part of the plan in becoming from an inland port to a dry port is that we do become a customs clearance area, and we can then hold goods before they've officially entered the country. This then becomes very important when we have the supply chain disruptions with, for example, the American and the President Trump's policies he's put in place, this has affected trade significantly and has allowed and has sort of ended up with a few snarl-ups. These snarl-ups are then finding their ways to the shock absorber, which is currently the Durban port and the surrounding CBD. What we are advocating for with MIPA is that these are now moved to the inland port facilities in order to ensure efficient, effective operations of the port areas, which are the most expensive assets and need to be utilized at full efficiency. Quickly, if I can then come into specifically the Cater Ridge example, and it now talks to the sort of slide on the previous page, in that what is currently happening is all trucks and container, all cargo is desired to be collected directly from the port. This ensures that it is very slow and congested. If we have then changed the system, which is what has now been approved by Parliament as well as by Transnet, is that we now have backup port facilities, which are equivalent to the back or outer gate of the port itself. What has been identified to date on the north is the Durban Trade Port. On the west, which captures the Gauteng traffic, is Cater Ridge Inland Port, which I represent. And then the old airport / Clearwood Racetrack is where they are looking to have the third mass evacuation point as a backup port facility. Just some of the stats you see, and it's important that we highlight that various of our members are in various stages of operations. Cater Ridge Inland Port, for example, is currently operational, and we are moving trains, which is starting to bear effect. And what you see on the screen are the sort of volumes and truck trips that we have removed off the roads, and just some of the steps that we've taken in order to make sure that, one, we are a 24/7 operation, and two, that we act as seamlessly in this point, and these inland ports or multimodalism areas don't act as friction points in the supply chain. And we're happy to see that investment has already been sort of followed in Cater Ridge, and we have recently had Maersk unveil their new cold storage facility right on the rail, which is a great proof or sort of vindication of what we're doing, and that, for example, the big shipping lines are very interested in taking positions around it. Current operations, what I'm going to ask is if Jan can just play a video showing the current Cater Ridge Inland Port operations, and then that will be the end of my presentation. Thank you, colleagues, and I will take questions at the end once all of the other presentations are complete.
Okay,
thank you very much, Warwick. We'll wait for that video, and then we will move on to Tumi at Tambo Springs.
Just one moment. I'll start it over. Let me just stop and restart here. Okay.
The Cater Ridge Inland Port links the port to the interland destination via road, rail and pipeline. Located approximately 50 kilometers away from the Durban port, CRIP offers an efficient independent rail service where containers are loaded and offloaded from rail to port and nearby distribution centers. Why CRIP? Efficient independent rail terminal, affordable land prices, close proximity to the N3 corridor, and a direct link to the Port of Durban. The Cater Ridge Inland Port offers stuffing and de-stuffing for containers, facilities for bulk storage, and raw platform land for logistics operations and development. In an effort to decongest the Port of Durban, CRIP offers truck staging facilities that aim to hold trucks destined for the port, thereby alleviating congestion at the port and surrounds. This will address some of the congestion issues currently being experienced by the port community. It is anticipated that this development will create much needed jobs and opportunities in the area and region for KZN. It is logical to invest and take a position in Cater Ridge to ensure your business's future is well solidified.
Thank you.
Thank you, Warwick and Jan. Can I ask Tumi to switch on his video camera and to enlighten us as to the comings and goings at Tambo Springs. Thank you very much, Tumi.
You're on mute if you can't hear you, Tumi.
Okay, I've unmuted myself. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Yeah. My name is Tumi Muhulazi from Newlands Group, and I'm here to take you through Tambo Springs. I've divided my presentation to cover 4 themes. One is building strategic relationships and partnerships. Second theme is just applying technology and innovation. The third theme is just driving freight performance in the corridors. And the last one is just creating a better South African future. As you all know, Tambo Springs has been many years in the making. One of the big developments that has happened recently is the involvement of Newland, whom I represent today. Newland is finalizing the acquisition of Tambo Springs. Newland is an industrial developer that has developed over 27 properties fully let, has 41 blue chip clients. And one of the recent developments at the bottom right is the PX Bayhead development. This was a development that was opened by President Ramaphosa in April last year. It has rail access. I'll be referring to it later on so that you can understand why the investment and the acquisition of Tambo Springs was made. As Warwick said, we belong to, we like using the word the ecosystems of terminals and logistics platform in South Africa. Tambo Springs sits in the heart of this in Gauteng. And through the MIPA association, we see an opportunity to collaborate and cooperate between these hubs. And through that, we think that that's how you're going to get efficiencies. And it's a theme that will probably be followed through on these presentations as we go forward. This slide you've seen before, which I'm also going to work on a bit more. MIPA terminals coexist with other terminals like Pyramid. I'm told that Teheri is on the platform who's doing something in Pyramid. But Transnet owns Pyramid, Galfontein, the Planning Center, and they have City Deep and Bayhead. We hope in the future some of these terminals will also be MIPA members. It just makes coordination and cooperation a bit easier within a safe environment where there's NDAs and things like that to make it much, much easier. The long-term strategy is obviously for other terminals outside South Africa to become members. I think Dr. Van Rysburg has touched on that, so that collaboration can go beyond just South Africa. As Barbara has said, we can't just be islands and think we're in competition. We're not. We are Africans and working with fellow Africans. SARS is important in this because now once you're talking cross-border, efficiencies need to come in. There's a slide that also I'm going to pick on that deals with that in terms of being able to clear at inland ports. An update on Tambo Springs for those who might not know it is Tambo Springs is on the N3 corridor, is that little red blob there. The blue line, that's the N3 going towards Durban. The black line is the railway line, which is connected to Cape Town, Muga, PE towards that side of the ports. And if you follow it towards the right-hand side, it connects now to Durban. Towards the north, it connects to Maputo Harbour, and then further north, it will connect to Pyramid and the northern ports of Gauteng. It is plus minus 20 kilometers, 26 kilometers from OR Tambo, so it's a well-positioned platform, and it's a strong rail focus. The block that you see there is 2,000 hectares, 1,450 of which is controlled by Newland. So there's an ability to scale. And if you're able to scale, then you can create the optimum freight village where retail and manufacturing and residential and other activities can take place. So if I circle back to why Newland made this investment, As we know, Bayhead exists. Bayhead has has 7 tenants. They occupy on average 60,000 square meter of super sites with rail access. PX can handle 7 blockchains simultaneously. And most of these clients were saying we are road-based, we're using too much road and not enough of rail, even though they have rail access, because we don't have a destination in Gauteng where we can link the two, so that we can move our cargo predominantly on rail. As the previous speakers have said, it's more economical that way. And that's why then Tambo Springs came into the scene, where we then control 1,450 hectares. We're planning to have 6 super sites for big users, and we're going to have a multimodal, multi-user site for the rest of the tenants there. In that previous slides, you also see Carteret, where we also see a consolidation happening for clients around Carteret to be able to link as well with Tambo Springs in the first phase. So what would this mean if we were to do this? What would happen then is the clients at PX, the existing clients we have at PX, when we ask to check how much trucks go through that gates, because every movement in and out of PX is recorded, it was north of 500,000 per annum of trucks going through that gate. So if you were to say reduce that, you could land at about 400,000 trucks off the N3 in the phase 1 of Tambo Springs, just by twinning 2 clients that exist and 1 that's going to be future at Tambo Springs. As I've said, other regional clients could also then connect at Carteret, where they can consolidate. Even clients from Tambo Springs who want to meet a stake date for berth to go onto the ship could move their containers to Carteret, wait for a berth time, and then literally go to the ship. So it just adds those efficiencies. We do know the Port of Durban does have King's Rest, where there is rail, so that can also be twinned. And of course, in the future, there'll be other provinces and other private developers developing inland ports, which we are happy to be twinned. The more, the merrier for us. In terms of the land bridge concept, which Warwick touched on, the ability for a container to land and not be touched by SARS, because they will get a second opportunity to clear it at Tambo Springs. Technology allows it because we have track and trace, we've got a scanning technology, and that's the technology that's embedded in our thinking of Tambo Springs and how to make this future generational and take it to the next level. So those are the themes that are embedded in the way we're looking at Tambo Springs. The SEZ agreements have already been signed with GIDZ. GIDZ is the license holder of the SEZ at OR Tambo, and they've been looking at Tambo Springs, and we've been working with them for many years to enable SEZ designation at Tambo Springs. So that's very much advanced. What would this mean for South Africa? Well, currently it will take you 8 to 9 days, the way we're doing the system, which is road-based, to move cargo. However, if you were able to move to rail and allow for clearance to happen at Tambo Springs and other ports that will come online, you could cut that to 3 to 4 days. What that means is all the elements that Dr. Van Rysbeck spoke about, bringing down the cost of logistics, you improving the economy, you improving employment, you're literally making this now an efficient economy. And my last slide is, as I said, as you saw in my presentation, I didn't drill down into the layout of Tambo Springs because what we are currently doing is reworking the master plan. We're moving from a site that had 3 predominant landowners. Each of them had their own master plan, to having 1 integrated master plan, which is what we're currently busy with. And come towards the 3rd quarter of this year, we'll probably embark on a stakeholder engagement, engaging future clients, engaging funders, and the market at large. And that's my last slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tumi. That was very well done. I'm now calling on Johan from Autoforce. After him will be MIT, which is Anand, and then Winelands that Purchase doing. Then I'm going to ask Warwick to take over chairmanship, and I will do Rail Runner, and Warwick will do the questions and answers and the final wrap up and close the session. Thank you very much, everyone.
Hi, great, Mike, and the rest of the members joining us on this platform today. I just want to check with you, Mike. Can Can you guys obviously see my screen? I would imagine you can.
We can see you. We can't see your presentation yet.
Fortunate. Just see. There we go. I would imagine you can see it now, hopefully. Okay,
Wonderful.
great.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so thank you very much. My name is Johan Krug, obviously. I'm one of the directors for Autoforce. So I'm quickly going to go through this presentation. One thing that I want to just make very clear to the rest of the panel and to everybody joining us on this platform today is that I would like to speak a little bit about the movement of commodities, specifically in the manganese industry where we predominantly operate, because it's important for you to understand the flow of the cargo, a little bit to understand why we are actually promoting these intermodal sites, dry depots, as we call it, or sidings, and why we're putting so much effort and emphasis on the development of rail. Because as soon as you understand how how much trucks are used to transport the commodities, how that is, and the lack of rail capacity, what that has done to infrastructure, and how much commodities has moved over to trucks, then you will start to understand what is the real situation that we're dealing with here at the moment, and why we need to put so much more emphasis on it. So to start off with that, obviously Autoforce, who is Autoforce? Autoforce is obviously a logistics company operating predominantly from the Northern Cape area, focusing on 3 ports. We're exporting commodities, primarily manganese at this point in time, and iron ore through the port of Quebec or Port Elizabeth. Then Saldanha will start very, very soon now, and then Lüderitz is also a site that will start now in the next 60 days or so. We'll start operate in Lüderitz. Lüderitz is a very small port, but due to the lack of capacity in other ports, we've been spending an awful lot of time in that port to try to make that commercially viable, and we've finally reached that point where we've now invested quite a significant amount of money or funds into that port, and we will export hopefully around 180,000 tons monthly through that port, starting now with the first shipment, starting moving cargo there from July. I'll go into the details into that soon. With that said, I want to now go straight into the manganese specifically, which is the most commodity, the biggest volumes of commodities that we as Autoforce transport is manganese. So I want to quickly put that in context for you. So obviously South Africa is set to host about 75 to 80% of the world's manganese resources. South Africa supplies only about anything between 36 and 45% of that manganese of the world's demand, which obviously shows that there's scope for growth, and it is growing as well, and we'll speak to that shortly. Manganese is listed as a critical mineral, 1 of 50, and then you can see here for 2024, the financial year for 2023-2024, South Africa exported 20.6 million tons of manganese, and the value thereof was about 49 billion in revenue for South Africa. What is manganese getting used for? Just quickly, it's obviously for steel, non-ferrous alloys, which is 90% of that. Batteries and chemicals, the other 10%. However, what is important here is that batteries are driving the biggest growth of manganese. Not obviously, we'll never overtake the use what steel is doing, but the biggest growth, or batteries at least, contributing to a lot of growth in terms of manganese. Some figures that I've seen is said to the growth rate for manganese in terms of batteries is said to be almost 40% compound annual growth rate. The usage for manganese in terms of batteries. So that is quite significant. So now the manganese and volumes for I'm using the 22-23 financial year figures because that's the most accurate ones that I could say that I'm happy with. So obviously, we exported for that year, we exported 21.6 million tons. Rail moved 14.3 million tons. Tons moved by road was 7.3 million tons. Road transport equates 33% of that was obviously moved by road. So 1/3 basically. In 2019, manganese transport by road was only 3.1 million tons. So from 2019 to 2023, manganese transport road was 7.3. It grew to 7.3 million tons, which is 135% increase in road transport. Rail from 2019 to the 2022-2023 financial year remained static. Was a 0% increase in rail capacity. Iron ore and I'm going to speak to iron ore now. That's very, very important to take note of this as well. Is 2021 we exported about 54 million tons. Then it was 2022 was 56 million tons, and 2023 was 50 million tons. I believe this year was slightly higher again, just over 50. So, and our market share is very low. Anything between 3.5. I see other figures are pointing to a slightly higher market share, but a significant small market share. Now, what is important about the iron ore basically is double that of manganese. Predominantly all this iron ore is transported by rail transport. However, I've said this already in 2022. I started saying that we're going to see more iron ore going onto road. Then it became clearer in 2024, last year, that this is actually happening. And since the beginning of the year, a massive amount of volume is already, or a significant amount of volume has started going onto road. Basically, our facility in P has started exporting iron ore. The last time iron ore was exported through the port of Kuga, or Port Elizabeth, was in 1972, 1973. We've already done 2 vessels. We're busy doing now a 3rd one. And we've already got orders basically putting out the 2 vessels per month for the next 12 months. So that's more than 1 million tons already per annum just going through P, and that is 100% road transport, which if you calculate that back to transport, you can see a significant increase in road transport just because there's a lack of rail capacity. And this is this is obviously just speaks to iron ore. This doesn't even obviously speak to the manganese that are already referred to. So the manganese numbers in trucks, if you point the volumes that we exported in truck numbers, obviously that 7.3 million tons that we exported in 2022-2023 gives you 192,105 truckloads per annum. That gives you 384 truck trips. That's now full and empty. And that gives you obviously 16,000 loads per month, which basically gives you 1,456 trucks on average transporting manganese, exclusively manganese basically. That gives you about 32 million tons traveled per month. And those trucks will obviously consume about 11.85 million liters of fuel. And that gives you, 31,640 tons of carbon emissions per month. Now, what does that mean? Where does this pointing to? Now, quickly, we don't have to go read through all this. Obviously, you guys can download it. I just want to point quickly to the manganese industry that is projected to grow on a 5%. All the statistics that I could gather sets the compound annual growth rate of manganese at 5.02%, roughly 5%. Ironically enough, our volumes are shown from 2013 to 2014 to now the 23-24 financial year. Our exports have grown 10% per year, compound annual growth rate. So if we want to project the growth rate of manganese specifically, I think it's conservatively enough to work on a 5% compound annual growth rate because that's what all the markets also point to. Now, if we start putting that into the numbers, then let's see what we've obviously done now in 2023. We exported 21.6 million tons. Now let's grow that compound annual growth rate 5%. That means by 2028, we should export roughly 27 million tons of manganese per annum from South Africa. Now, if we keep the tons the same, which trucks has been transporting 7.3, let's keep that the same. And Transnet just have to increase rail capacity just to make provision for the growth of the manganese, the additional manganese volumes that is coming online due to the growth rate. That means by 2028, Transnet needs to transport or move 20.7 million or 20.27 million tons of manganese per annum just to cater for the growth of manganese. That doesn't even speak to the current manganese running on trucks, obviously, or transported by trucks. That is a 41.73% increase in rail capacity that we need from Transnet just on the manganese to obviously address the growth rate of manganese. Now, what we are told, and because obviously we deal with Transnet on a daily basis, we do understand that they have challenges. And from what we can understand, and I'm talking under correction here, but what we can understand, they do not foresee a significant increase in rail capacity or any for that matter for the next 36 months at least. So we use that figures and say, okay, fine, for the next 3 years, let's assume Transnet will not increase any significant rail capacity. That means that's going to go to trucks. And this speaks to this number then. So that means by 2028, Transnet would have grown roughly about 5%. If we say from 2027, they start taking up the manganese in terms of the growth rate. That means by 2028, road transport will need to transport 12.56 million tons of manganese compared to the current 7.3. So, and then Transnet will be, at that point in time, Transnet only 50 million tons. This is an additional, this is a 72% growth rate in truck transport of manganese only. So looking again that into numbers, road transport growth from 2019 to 23, as I said, was 135%. Road transport increase from 23 to 28, projected growth rate, as I said, will grow from 7.3 million tons to 12.5 million, 6 million tons. That gives you additional 72%. So that means again from 2019 to 28, truck transport in the manganese industry, this doesn't speak to any of the iron ore that I just referred to earlier. Just on the manganese, we foresee a 305% transport increase or truck transport increase in the manganese industry alone. You know, where we obviously will be projected that growth rate in the rail transport from 29 to 28, only 5%. The current trucks running the manganese predominantly is this kind of vehicle that I've got here in the picture at the moment. These kind of units are basically 90% of all trucks that running manganese look like this. The CSIR has released a report that basically saying that these trucks are causing the most damage to our road infrastructure. If you compare the various trucks that is available in the market, then these ones with their super singles, because you've got the full load of the trailer, you know, carried by eight super singles compared to your duals, which will then obviously double the tires on it and so forth. But that's not a lot of detail that we don't have to go into now. But the CSR, you know, obviously has said that this causes the most damage to our road infrastructure. We also, our data has shown that 30% of these trucks that coming to our various sites are 30% overloaded, and obviously deliberate overloaded compared to just the accidental overload, which is normally 300, 400 kilograms. You will see a deliberate overload, 30%, which is about anything between 2 to 3 tons, even sometimes 4 tons. And it's also causing the most accidents on our infrastructure. Our P operation, which is also now set to be our facility in PE, that is currently our facility in PE, but we obviously want to bring in rail in here, develop into intermodal staging area. As you can see, this is just the aerial view of our manganese operations. We received and dispatched sometimes up to 1,000 truckloads in a 24-hour shift. It's very effective and efficient. We can stockpile quite a significant amount of volume. The site is 20 hectares big. We already have the land next to, you know, the farm is 1,200 hectares, my apologies. And we've already got the necessary environment approvals to start developing the next 20 hectares, making provision for rail that is coming online. We've got a railway siding adjacent to this facility, which is connected obviously to the main line coming from the Northern Cape. So the plan is, I'm going to play this video in the meantime while I'm talking to you, but the plan is obviously to develop that railway siding now that will see a typical 104 wagon train coming from the Northern Cape, coming into our siding, where we can then obviously offload it effectively, fast. That is the plan, and then move the cargo to our facility. I've mentioned to you that the railway siding is adjacent to our facility, but there's an issue that we can't develop. We can't offload the cargo there. We need to either transport it via truck short haul, as we call it, to where the material is stockpiled, or we also now considering the idea to build a loop into the facility and then offload the material at the staging or at the facility where we obviously store the cargo. So this model, this video that you see, obviously is the old model, but we're also considering now building the loop, as I said. We are far advanced in this regard. We obviously just need a couple more approvals, and obviously Transnet is we're working closely with Transnet to start getting into the development phase. funding to a certain extent has been secured already, so we just need to get the final approval from Transnet, and then this is set to go. We're hoping to start construction this year still. That is the plan at this stage. One thing that I also want to make very clear, just by saying this as well, the significant difference between this development and the typical operations that is currently happening in the manganese, because obviously there is another 3 operators offloading trains at their facilities. But at this stage, the full train, 104 wagon train needs to come into the Allows staging area or Allows staging area. Then that is there. They start breaking it up and start moving it with locomotives into the various back of ports operators. And I'm not sure exactly how many wagons they take at a time, but it's not much. And this causes a lot of delays because you also need the shunters, and it's causing obviously delays, where we foresee that this will assist Transnet also by developing more capacity or increase their capacity with existing rolling stock. So instead of investing in more rolling stock, we need to offload the railway wagons. We need to offload the rail wagons, faster and more efficiently, and automatically that will increase more capacity. And that is the whole idea behind this model that we're building. Just in the meantime, or just on the sideline as well, a little bit deviate from the rail side of things, Autoforce has worked very hard to see that whatever we do it as effective and efficiently as possible, but also sustainably. We predominantly our own fleet of trucks as PBS trucks. We are an RTMS accredited company, and we use trucks that is obviously 35% more increase in payload, 38% less trucks on the road. It contributes obviously less trucks on the road, 24% safer, 17% less road wear, 22% less fuel per ton. It's highly regulated. So obviously we're getting audited annually. These trucks carry a payload of 52 tons, obviously, compared to a standard 38 tons. So obviously it's a significant increase in payload, and obviously makes this more effective and efficient. The cargo from that site that I've shown you gets transported obviously to the vessel in port, very close. We're 13 kilometers from port. We use road trains instead of the conventional standard trucks that carries only 34 tons, I believe. Our road trains carries anything between 55 tons payload. If you add the weight of the skips, it's 61 tons. Each one road train replaces 2 standard trucks on the road, and again, less trucks on the road, 41% more fuel efficient, and significantly, or very importantly, 34% less road wear. This is one of our newest units that we're busy expanding on, and the reason why I want to stand still here quickly on this particular unit, we're talking a lot about increasing rail capacity and moving more cargo over to rail, which obviously we support 100%. But what our argument is, we cannot just try to source more rail capacity. We need to make sure that the rail capacity that comes online is also very efficient. Because what has happened in the transport market with the likes of this particular units, because there was no rail capacity, we had to work very hard with our clients that did not have rail capacity to develop transport methods that can compete with rail or can put them in a position to compete with the rest of the clients. So this particular unit carries 63 tons payload, anything between 62 and 63 tons payload. And this truck has put us in a position to go to our clients and offer a solution or an export solution that competes basically directly with rail. To give you an idea how close we are, the rates that we're offering our clients, is slightly higher, just slightly higher than that compared to MECA rates. MECA, as you all know, is basically the guys that's got the MECA rates transporting the rail or the cargo straight from the mine onto the typical back of port operation and then onto the vessel. With this particular unit, we've been able to basically almost match that rate. We're not matching it, but we're very, very close. So, because it's the rail, obviously everybody wants rail capacity, but we've also seen that rail needs to start becoming more effective as well. It doesn't help you just have got rail capacity, but it's not effective. And this is where, again, intermodal dry ports can assist in that regard to make our rail not only to develop more rail capacity, but also to ensure that rail capacity that we've got is efficient and effective at the end of the day. Just quickly, this again, all of you can go read through this yourself.
But can I just get you to hurry up? But sorry, we're running late on time.
Sure. All right. Autoforce Aluders project, again, will, as we said earlier, will also be one of our, sites, and will also, be dependent exclusively on PBS trucks and rail. We're busy developing a rail strategy with our partners here with us today on this platform. And at this stage, we are far advanced in having a rail access agreement signed with Transnamib, and that will enable us to put our own rolling stock on the railway line, and then also to move our cargo with our own rolling stock due to the rail access agreement that we've got. This again, it's just basically, what I've just said, just in a slideshow. You can go and read through that. The last closing comments that I can make, this is my last slide, is basically South Africa has the highest amount of trucks versus GDP in the world. 80% of all cargo transported in sub-Saharan Africa is obviously commodities, which obviously shows the lack of rail capacity. Despite that, 70% of all rail networks, exist in South Africa alone, which does mean we had the rail infrastructure at one point in time, and we obviously need to work towards that again. Truck transport must support rail, not replace it. And then obviously, we firmly believe a healthy rail industry creates a healthy and sustainable truck and transport industry as well. That's from my side, Mike.
Thank you, Johan. That's now 10 to 1. We've got 2 more presentations. That's MIT and Winelands. In the interest of time, we won't do the rail runner presentation. We'll go MIT. Anand, are you ready? Are you there? And
yeah, I'm ready.
Winelands. Wonderful. And can you try and speed it up? Thank you very
100%.
much. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, just thanks for the team for bringing us all together on this platform. I think a lot has been said. So I would rather focus, try and get the time saved here by just giving 5 to 8 minutes. As you know, the MIT facility fits into the multimodal plan. It sits near Messina. And the objective here is, unfortunately, when the rail processes was an integrated tariff, as transport volume on the north-south corridor started reducing, of course, at that stage when Transit was giving an integrated price, the pricing went out of sync and hence was not competitive enough to attract any volume at the facility as a multimodal facility. That's now being potentially solved via the fact that we now have a network access price that comes. We've applied for some slots as part of this open access slot application process and hope, therefore, to solve the pricing challenge of how to give our customers a cost-effective solution. And we're going to focus on 2 customers as a case study under the theme how to lower logistics costs to the industry. So the next slide just talks about where we fit in, that we're trying to achieve this 250 million ton, and the game changer is siding designs and how to maximize. And I like the way Johan also shared about his designs and the ones at Tombo and the one that Warren has down there, all about trying to make rail efficient in terms of the siding being the game changer in cycle times and volume onto train. The next slide just talks to you. We do that in the context of working together with the RSR, MIPA, as well as ARIA, the Transport Forum, and just get everyone together with one objective to see, can we get some good case studies working that drives this performance? Next slide for me. All of that comes as an integrated logic that ultimately it's all about cycle time of wagons and locomotives. That will give you the price competition that we after. And that means you must operate on the network and get the cycle times of when you invest in your wagons and locos. And that needs a system then to be integrated. And that's what this slide is talking about. The next slide just talks about, we're going to flip this on, the volume out there is immense. And therefore, we see lots of opportunities for many partners to come online and many companies to come online to feed this gap of road and rail adequate market share. Next slide. Just gives you a feel of the terminal. As you know, the terminal sits at the entry to Messina town. It's a developed facility, and what we've done is enhance the slab. If you go to the next slide, with some improvements. The road was then bypassed so that it's got a direct access now from the new road that was built. So there's a nice entry into the terminal. As you can see, it's got both a warehouse infrastructure as well as a open area for bulk containers and bulk product. The next slide then talks about how we're trying to lower costs. Let's go to the next slide. So a couple of customers are on the deck of opportunity. This was citrus customer. Let's just talk the two case studies quickly. One was citrus. That area between Zimbabwe and the growing area just on the Limpopo River, both contribute to around 7 to 8 million cartons, which is around 5,000 containers grown there over the growing season. Given the phyto protocols, the thought was to build a cold store with the farmers. But if you couldn't get the price advantage where instead of the customers, as they currently do it, road haul the cargo down to the port and then put it into warehouse and then if you couldn't get that number and bring a 15% saving to the game, there was no way to attract a long-term business here. We're hoping now with the access agreements we've applied for, that if you can swing a train set of 50 wagons on the corridor with one set of locos, drop off a train, pick up a train, so 2 sets of wagons, 1 set of loco, we think we can get to a price point that gives the citrus farmers around a 15 to 20% price advantage. So that process is where we are targeting based on the slot application we've made. The next one, if you look at the slab, just go to the next slide. I think this further shows you what the terminals already was an operational terminal with reach stackers as well as full 24/7 operation and reefer points. So you can load these things once they chill to put them into a reefer train, running them down to the port. Next slide. Yeah, in this slide, the other product that we're targeting now is a multimodal product for AMSA with DP World. As you know, AMSA is bringing in imported coking coal from Wankie area down to the Vanderbijl plant. Currently, the direct route of rail does not give you good optimization. So we're looking at a rail optimization model. We use the ZIM network with BBR, shuttle in product with containers, offload them on our slab, and then with TFR and the access agreement that we're working with, we're looking to load now. We've just done the test where we can do a 60-wagon train. So loading 60 wagon trains at full 60-ton carrying capacity means we can move a train size of 3,600 tons per train down to Vanderbijl Park. And we're hoping that rail rate solution will also give AMSA an ability to get like a 20% saving on the current road model that exists. So again, all these solutions are designed to ultimately find, and I think Barbara was clear about that, ultimately you have to get to a value curve that makes the customer want to come to a multimodal solution. And if you can't deliver on the price formula, then you can't do it. So open access with Transnet has enabled us now to deal with that because you've separated a specific price for access and then how much do you sweat the loco and wagons. That will be how price is now capable of doing it. And if the networks can run at 30 kilometers an hour on average, then that should define how many trips you should get from each loco and wagon set. And that's the modeling we've done that shows that if you dedicate a set of locos with a 1 set of wagons and a drop-off on either side, you should be able to get to numbers that start to give the customers around a 20% saving. So I'm going to stop there, Warren, just to allow you to wrap up. And I think all about bringing value to customers and making sure that we optimize. I mean, the last slide, I can just bring that up, the last one. Let's go right. Yeah, that, some hard decisions are necessary. And I think Transnet, as much as separating the organization in the case study with the US railways, these were the 5 main criterion on how you get to price points that start making this price start to make sense. Currently, TFR's pricing has drifted out, integrated pricing, drifted out to over 80 cents a ton kilometer. That's way too high. You have to be getting down to around 50 cents, 55 cents a ton kilometer to make the real saving to road, because that's when you get the arbitrage. You heard Johan say that ultimately, if you bring these big, heavy trucks in play, they get too close. But rail is meant to be sweated in speed and volume per train. That will get you to your price points. So thank you very much, and ready to engage with anybody in terms of collabing on working on solutions. Thanks very much.
Wow, thank you very much, Arnon. You did that in super quick time. And in the interest of time, Bertie said he will also forego the Winelands presentation because they are very much in the planning phase at this point in time. And I have elected not to do the Rail Runner presentation. You've all seen it. You all know what Rail Runner is. And it's the glue that sticks all the multimodal terminals together. And without further ado, I hand over to Warwick Lord, the chairman of the Multimodal Inland Port Association. Thank you, Warwick.
Mark, thank you, and thank you for emceeing this whole event. I think you've done it with aplomb, especially considering some of the difficulty and the teething problems when we had with sound as well as speaker issues. And thanks very much for hosting in place of Harry, who we pray for a very speedy recovery. I'd like to sort of, I've got two jobs here at the moment. One is to sort of handle any questions on behalf of, well, not on behalf of, but focus them on behalf of the presentations that the MIPA members have just done. And so if I can please ask you to raise hands if you have any questions. At the same time, while these questions are sort of being formulated by you, I thought I'd sort of give some of the takeout points so that when we do end up the questions, we can sort of wrap up the session. I'd like to firstly thank, Ian Mchlali and Jakob for excellent presentations, highlighting and showcasing sort of the immense amount of hard work that's being done. What I particularly enjoyed and that we don't often see, or we don't see that visibly, is that the hardest part of a building is normally the foundations, and you don't normally see any of the foundations until the building starts coming out of the ground. So I'm encouraged by what's been said today, in that there's significant hard work going on in the background, and that these foundations are now being laid very solidly. The collaboration is also happening between the public and the private sector, and the sort of rail reform and the pace thereof is actually head spinning and head turning. If you think about the rail master plan, the RFI, competition exemption, TRIM established, DOT taking over responsibility, and Transnet, as well as the whole supply chain, the OVA 2.0 data bank now being created, we are starting to see all of the various flags that sort of showcase the direction that we're going in. And from specifically the MIPA point of view and the MIPA membership, we are over the moon with regards to the public sector and Mchlali and her team sort of effort with regards to what's been happening in this rail reform. And we are very happy to say that the rail renaissance is now officially underway. And that gives us the ability as private sector, and I hope the colleagues on this call can see the opportunity that's being created by private sector now being able to play in both the rail and port processes and infrastructure where we weren't able to play before at all. So, I think it's time for all of us to roll up our sleeves. This is not a his problem or her problem, government's problem, a private sector problem. This is a combined problem for all of us. And as Jakob highlighted in his presentation, the effects of not getting it right, or getting the sort of the bottom of the funnel right so that we can get to that socioeconomic development and job creation, is built on a robust, effective and efficient supply chain. So very happy that that's ongoing. And then if I can just end off, firstly, before I end off, are there any questions or queries that I can ask, or ask any of the members that you have? Otherwise, I'm cognizant of time and we'll wrap up in the next minute or so. Mark, I take it there's no hands up, so I'm going to continue.
Yeah, there's no hands up. Okay.
Guys, so in conclusion, I believe that there's a lot of excitement in the air. There's a lot of opportunity. However, there's also some risk. And with opportunity, there is always a bit of risk. My personal view at the moment is, if not now, then when? And if not us, then who? It's now time to roll up our sleeves, get on and start developing the supply chain that we want for SA Inc., so that we get the outcomes that come with us. I'd like to end off by thanking once again the speakers. Thank once again the MIPA members. Thank you, colleagues, for joining us and having a look into what we do and some of the things we're talking about. I encourage all of you to be MIPA members. Specifically, I'd like to congratulate Mchlali on being the newest MIPA member, as we would love to have her on board. Having DOT represented in our association would be a big vantage point, and I think for both parties, being able to see what's happening on the other side of the fence. So thank you. I would also like to address some of the misconception or perception maybe regarding trucking fraternity and train fraternity being at odds and ends with each other. Both myself and Mike, who are MIPA members, are attending the Road Freight Association convention this weekend, and we will both be presenting how the road and rail coexist, and actually one is completely complementary of the other. There is no replacement of one or the other. So I would just like to end with saying thank you very much, colleagues. We are very excited and we see lots of opportunities. We hope as many of you as possible will join MIPA and join us along on this journey. And just once again, thank you so much for your time and effort. God bless and good luck with everything you do. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Meeting is ended.
Let's close it. Thank you very much, Jan. You can close the session, and we look forward to the next one. Thank you. Bye.
From my side as well, thank you so much, everyone, and especially Mike and Warwick. Thanks for your standing in as well for Harry. We really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.